2026-2027 final has expressed special concern over the destruction to civilian infrastructure and the global impact of the conflict. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Our top story, the closure of the N3. Pietermaritzburg bound coming out of Durban. The road is closed between Keyridge and Cliffdale. A big truck with a Hazchem load is overturned up by Cliffdale, forcing the closure of the route towards Pietermaritzburg. Long queues, backlog of trucks, and probably some motorists stuck there between Shongweni and the closure at Keyridge, and others stuck on the M13 out from Hillcrest getting onto the M3 ramp as well. All that shut down. Options coming out of Durban off ramp at Richmond Road, get up to the M13, bottom of Fields Hill, go through Kloof, Hillcrest, and look for the old main road up through Bottas Hill. If you've missed that, if you're around Marion Hill Plaza, you've got the exit at Cassia Road, Shongweni, and then you get up into Hillcrest and onto that old main road. Either way, make sure you've got plenty of time to get out of Durban through to Pietermaritzburg. If you're driving a truck, it might be better to just sit tight. Also, reports of a vehicle flipping over on Fields Hill as well. That's on the Pinetown bound carriageway. So if you're coming from Kloof in towards Pinetown, that's quite a heavy backlog as well. A little truck overturning and losing its load on that eastbound section of Fields Hill. Breakdown and a crash on the M1 North going into Buccleuch. If you're coming from Four Ways, that's going to be busy. And Cape Town heavy on the N2 inbound, passing Khayelitsha. Some queues moving through towards Borchards Quarry Road. With your traffic updates, I'm Rob Byrne.
It's a very good morning to you in your SFM sports headlines. Plenty of soccer action last night. Orlando Pirates reclaim the top spot with a hard-fought win over Richards Bay. And we head to Miami for the Indian Wells tennis tournament where Carlos Alcaraz is through and so is Jessica Pegula. We'll have the details at around 6:30.
The Morning Brief, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
Good morning, John Gericke in for Tulas, 6 minutes past 6 o'clock. Welcome to the show. It's the Morning Brief. I was just reminded this morning, in fact, that Cape Town has a chief heat officer. I forgot about that. We laughed and laughed. City of Cape Town, what do you need a chief heat officer for? His name is Albert Ferreira, and he will lead efforts to raise heat awareness and protect our community as temperatures rise. This was at the end of last year, November of 2025. And everybody laughed, and sounds like nepotism. Why do we have to make this part of your insanity? Some of the tweets. The what now? Why don't you just plant trees? Can we have a chief snow officer, pretty please? And then Cape Town's temperatures today, a low in Cape Town of 29. Weather coming up in a moment. But yeah, was Cape Town ahead of the game? Or is it still just an unnecessary thing? If you're in Cape Town now, you're probably sitting there going, where's my heat officer? Welcome to the show. It's good to have you along. Coming up in a moment, we're going to get an update of what's happening in the Middle East. You heard Elvis doing a lot of these details. We're going to just get updates today as well. We're going to find out what is happening, mainly with the vessels. Latest news we have is that there are now 5 vessels attacked in the Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz as war puts merchant ships on the front line. So we're going to get an update on that and also what this means for our oil prices. The oil going up above $100 again today. A lot of fuel reserves being released across the globe. We'll get an update on that. Then big news that there might be an insourcing bill before Parliament, or there is an insourcing bill currently before Parliament, and the Public Servants Association saying it could help tackle long-standing service delivery failures and labour issues caused by outsourcing to the public sector. Going to get an update from them. There is this, you must have seen it on social medias, this Deputy Minister and ANC MP Bernice Swarts handing out loaves of bread to people. And now that Bernice Swarts saying the activity wasn't authorised by the party, And so they were handing out bread with ANC colours and branding, creating the impression the distribution formed part of an official party campaign. Well, the ANC spokesperson has clarified the initiative was a private activity and not mandated by an ANC structure. So we're going to find out what has come of that. Is this an ANC thing? Or are they just reacting now that because of the negative reactions? We're going to talk to Mahlengi Bungu Motsiri later on, an ANC national spokesperson, and get a vibe and find out what was going on there and what has happened since. The Defence Force have been released into a township in Johannesburg. We're going to find out a little bit more about that. So we will hear from two people today. We're going to get an update from the defence consultant and analyst, and then we'll go onto the ground. We'll talk to the Eldorado Park Ward 18 councillor, get views on exactly what is happening with the military, if it's a good thing, is it a bad thing, what the neighbourhood is feeling like now that the military is there. You've seen the videos of them walking with their rifles and their bulletproof vests and their helmets and things. I jokingly refer to, are we back in the 80s again? Because that's the vibe I get. But I guess if you're living in these terrorized communities, anything will help. But we'll get an update from the people on the ground. Then later on in the show, Elvis covered it a lot. We'll get a little bit of an angle on that as well. This is after the United States, the ambassador saying his views, but also in the same breath, the United States is increasingly frustrated with South Africa. They've got these 5 key demands at improving bilateral relations, and the ambassador saying that the United States is growing increasingly frustrated. He's saying nearly a year of non-response is becoming a statement in itself. So we're going to get a view of exactly on a number of issues when it comes to the U.S. ambassador. There's his views, his apology. There's what the States is wanting from us, what we are wanting from the States. How non-aligned are we? All of that's coming up much later on in the program. Weather coming up in a moment. We've got all the regular news. We've got traffic with Rob, as you heard, sport with Zai. Welcome to the show. John Gericke in for Tulas. It's 11 minutes past 6.
This February, fall in love with the journey. No phones, no flights. Just determination, connection, and the open road. From breathtaking landscapes to unexpected challenges. Race Across the World is back. Bigger, bolder, and more emotional than ever. Because sometimes the best way to find yourself is to travel together. Race Across the World Season 4, Thursdays at 6 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
The KwaZulu-Natal Department of Social Development will host the Partnership Summit taking place on the 12th and 13th of March 2026 in Durban. Hosted under the theme Driving a Skills Revolution, Emergency Job Creation and Inclusive Growth through Strategic Partnerships. The summit marks a bold shift from a welfareist dependency model towards a developmental social protection approach. The department is calling on business leaders, investors, CETAs, government entities, non-profit organizations, chambers of commerce and civil society to co-invest in human potential and community resilience. For more information on the summit, please contact the Department of Social Development on 072-105-8420 or venetia.nwamu@kzndsd.gov.za. KZNDSD. We serve with humility.
This February, fall in love with friendships that feel like family. Old bonds, new beginnings, and chapters that remind us why love, in all its forms, matters. The story comes full circle in Best Man, the final chapters, where love, loyalty, and life collide one last time. Because some stories stay with you long after the final scene. The Best Man, the final chapters, weeknights 7 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
The only talk radio morning breakfast show that makes sense. The Morning Brief.
Studio weather today, it's going to get hot down in the south. Heat wave conditions, persistently high temperatures expected over the western parts of the Namakwa District Municipality in the Northern Cape, west, southwest and northern parts of the Western Cape until Friday, as well as the Kukama Local Municipality in the Eastern Cape until Friday. That will persist until Saturday in places over the Sarah Baartman and the Amatola District, the King Sabata Dylan Diebo Local Municipality, Nelson Mandela Metro and Buffalo City Metro in the Eastern Cape. Also extremely hot and uncomfortable conditions expected over the Namakwa District Municipality in the Northern Cape, as well as in places of the Western Cape. Capital today, partly cloudy at first, otherwise cloudy, isolated showers and thunder showers, 14 to 23. Johannesburg, partly cloudy at first, otherwise cloudy, isolated showers and thunder showers, 12 to 20. Vereeniging, partly cloudy at first, otherwise cloudy, isolated showers and thunder showers, 11 to 20. Mbombela is cloudy, widespread showers and thunder showers, 15 to 19. Polokwane is partly cloudy at first, otherwise cloudy, scattered showers and thunder showers, 14 to 19. Mahikeng is fine at first, otherwise partly cloudy, isolated showers and thunder showers, 14 to 26. Freiburg, fine at first, otherwise partly cloudy, 10-29. Much the same in Bloemfontein, 13 to 28. Kimberley, fine at first, otherwise partly cloudy. Also Uppington, fine at first, otherwise partly cloudy. Kimberley, 16-31. Uppington, 20 to 35. Cape Town's fine, light and variable wind this morning, otherwise a moderate southerly, from a low of 29 to a high of 38. George is fine, a light and variable wind this morning, otherwise moderate southeaster to easterly, 20 to 34. Gqeberha's fine, a moderate to fresh easter to northeaster, 17 to 30. East London is fine with a fresh to strong northeasterly wind, 19 to 30. Durban's partly cloudy, a light northwesterly at first, otherwise a moderate to fresh northerly to northeasterly, 20 to 27. Richards Bay, cloudy, isolated showers and rain, a light to moderate southerly to southeasterly wind, 21 to 27. And Pietermaritzburg has some morning fog, otherwise it's fine to partly cloudy, from a low of 14 to a high of 27.
As the nation seeks answers, SAFM brings you live, uninterrupted coverage of Parliament's Ad Hoc Committee investigating allegations made by KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Commissioner, Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. You can also stay up to date with the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into Criminality, Political Interference and Corruption in the Criminal Justice System. Stay informed, stay connected. Tune in live on SAFM 104 to 107 and follow the coverage across our digital platforms live on Facebook, X and YouTube at SAFM Radio. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Don Gerika on SAFM.
Let's get a quick look at what's making the big headlines on the show and also around the country. Melissa Buta is one of the producers of the program. Morning, Melissa. South Africa's this Durko and the US ambassador story is one of the big ones today.
Good morning. Yes, John. So South Africa's Department of International Relations and Cooperation condemned the remarks by U.S. Ambassador Leo Brent Bozell, emphasizing that black economic empowerment is a constitutional tool to address historical inequalities and reaffirming respect for the country's judicial independence. Bozell publicly apologized after being summoned by the International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola and DIRCO Director General Zan Danga, who warned that his conduct will be closely monitored. Bozell had criticized South Africa for not meeting 5 U.S. asks, including revising the Expropriation Act, reviewing black economic empowerment policies, condemning the Kill the Boer chant, and addressing farm murders and maintaining geopolitical neutrality. He also dismissed a South African court ruling that the chant is not hate speech, calling it hate speech himself. Lamola stressed that while the U.S. remains an important strategic partner, Bozell's comments risked undermining bilateral relations. He also highlighted South Africa's concern over escalating tensions in the Middle East and urged the UN to prioritize multilateral solutions over geopolitical interests. So it will be interesting to watch the story and see how this unfolds.
We're going to be talking about that just after 8 o'clock today. And I see this, it sort of came late yesterday that I noticed this. Paul O'Sullivan could be in trouble for walking out of Parliament.
Yes, so the ad hoc committee investigating police corruption plans to file a criminal complaint against forensic investigator Paul O'Sullivan for walking out of proceedings and for sending threatening messages to the Chief of Staff of suspended Minister Senzo Mchunu. The complaint also references testimony from Cedric Nkabinde. The action follows a similar complaint by the Economic Freedom Fighters, the EFF, 2 weeks earlier. Committee legal advisor Telani Haley Starkey confirmed that all documents are with the Secretary to Parliament and will be formally submitted to the police once signed.
And water issues in Limpopo, there's a war room happening?
Yes, the Limpopo Premier Poppy Ramathuba said Polokwane's water crisis stems from a wider supply deficit rather than a single failure. Polokwane is short of 555.85 million liters of water, leaving residents and businesses struggling and some failing or falling ill rather from discolored water. Factors worsening the crisis include aging infrastructure, insufficient water resources, vandalism, corruption, and illegal electricity connections, disrupting operations, with authorities warning that illegal connections could lead to arrest. The provincial government has established a technical war room to plan solutions and urged residents to conserve water and fix leaks. Provincial and municipal authorities, including Polokwane Mayor John Mpe and Lepal Northern Water, are collaborating to strengthen monitoring and security and pipeline management, highlighting the crisis' critical impact on the province's economy and prompting urgent interventions. So it will be one that we have to watch closely to see how soon this could be fixed within the province.
And local airlines are increasing their prices. I see a lot of Zoom meetings happening instead of traveling around the country these days.
Yes, indeed. So FlySafair will charge extra on some flights from Thursday through to May 12th of this year after jet fuel prices jumped 70%. The spike is linked to the Middle East conflict, which has disrupted all shipments through the Strait of Hormuz. Current bookings won't be affected and any surcharge will be clearly shown on tickets. FlySafair says the fee is temporary and will be reviewed once fuel costs ease after the airline absorbed rising prices for as long as possible. So those who can avoid flying are urged to sort of maybe not fly during this time because it is tough times until further notice.
Yeah, even driving is going to be difficult at the end of the month. All right, Melissa Buta, thank you very much. It's 21 minutes past 6.
If you're active on social media and love SAFM, we hope you'll take a moment to like or follow our SAFM page on Facebook and Twitter. These are the best places to find all the guest information, conversations, and stories you love from your favorite presenters, along with regular updates from SABC News. And don't forget, you can send your questions to feedback@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversation. Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
Let's get an update on what's happening in the Middle East. Timothy Walker is a maritime project leader, senior researcher at the Institute for Security Studies. Timothy, good morning to you. Reports of now 5 commercial vessels being hit near the Strait of Hormuz. What's the latest news you've got for us?
Good morning, John. Morning to everyone listening. Thank you for having me on. Yes, the current count, it's 16 vessels in total since the 1st of March. 2 have been struck last night near Iraq, leaving 1 person to have been killed, unfortunately, and several seafarers still trapped inside the vessels. This seems to have been carried out by drones, remotely piloted waterborne vessels, very improvised sometimes, but very, very lethal. In fact, this is something we've increasingly seen the Ukrainians use to great success in the Black Sea. So the development of the war, the kind of the new weaponry being deployed, we've seen it before in many cases. We know how effective it's going to be, but we still don't know quite the extent to which the Iranians have stockpiles in which they're prepared to strike at vessels throughout the Persian Gulf.
There are these reports about mines that have been laid in that strait. Are there credible reports on that?
There's some reports, yes, that a few mines have been released. It's not quite clear how many in total. Emmanuel Macron, the French president, denied, sort of poured water on those claims last night. It was, I think, reported by CNN that there were several mines laid. The Iranians do have estimated stockpiles of up to about 6,000 mines, and many of these mines would be effectively dumb. They would be floating, and they would potentially target any vessel who would come near, which is why it's such a threat. It's such a kind of a risky maneuver even for themselves to do, because if they don't have any control over the mines left to float around the Persian Gulf entrance, the Strait of Hormuz, it would shut down their own shipping as well. There'd be a lot of shipping stuck inside and a lot of shipping stuck outside, leading to huge drops in, huge demand still around the world, all at the expense of several weapons which don't actually cost very much in total compared to missiles and ships.
There's also reports that it's moved out of that Gulf area. We're into the Red Sea now as well. Is that correct?
Well, the Red Sea is really now the lifeline. The Bab el-Mandeb, many listeners might recall, has been subject to a partial closure from the Houthi in Yemen for several years now, and they've been very quiet. They haven't targeted any vessels yet. Now, the major linkage for the Houthi was that they were Iranian proxies for a long time, but their relationship with Iran was a little more complex than that, a little more nuanced. They do have their own capacity to produce drones, to produce mines and missiles. Whether they'll use them to target shipping going through the Red Sea is still slightly unclear. What we are seeing is a major shift in a lot of the very large crude carrier vessels, which would previously have loaded in the Persian Gulf, now shifting to Saudi ports on the Red Sea. The Saudis have a pipeline which is capable of shifting about 5 million barrels a day from the east part of the country to the west side. There's only about a quarter of the entire daily oil output of the Gulf. So it's a drop in the ocean in a way, a drop in a bucket in a sense, but it's the only solution really which is presenting itself. So the Red Sea could become another theatre of the conflict if we see that Houthis start to attack vessels as they've done before. American-linked vessels, I should say.
I want to talk about the human cost of this. We've got reports of 1,300 dead in Iran already, 570 people killed in Lebanon as this just expands into Saudi Arabia, the UAE and Kuwait.
Yes, like I said, there are attacks happening all over the place. Really, the Israelis targeting many in Beirut. There was an order they put out recently for approximately 500,000 people to evacuate the southern suburbs of Beirut. It's like imagining 500,000 people being ordered to evacuate Johannesburg, for instance. The logistics of that are, to put a crude word on, insane. And the fact that there will be so many attacks ongoing, and there will be so many people who simply can't move, old people or frail people, but also families are caught up in this as well. And that pattern's been replicated in many other places. We don't see the Iranians targeting civilian, rather areas where there'll be high civilian casualties. They are trying to target, it seems, infrastructure, but many missiles go astray, many drones go astray. We've seen that with the first strike of the war, effectively, where the US Tomahawk missile hit a girls' school and it led to well over 100 people, many of them children, dying.
Sadly, we need to leave it there. Timothy Walker, thank you very much. Marine Project Leader, Senior Researcher at the Institute for Security Studies, brings us to 27 minutes past 6.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Morning, Zai. The happy people, a little bit happy after Richards Bay yesterday.
Oh, yeah, Buccaneers. They're very happy climbing to the top. I think Sundowns will be checking that table very carefully this morning, John. But let me just give you the results that happened last night. Orlando Pirates, they had a 2-0 victory over Richards Bay. The Buccaneers secured their third straight win to move level on 47 points, with Mamelodi Sundowns edging ahead on goal difference. Oswanapolis opened the scoring from a Khamogelo Sebelebele assist before Evidence Mahopa sealed the result from the penalty spot later on. Richards Bay, they dropped to 10th place on 23 points. More soccer, RB Leipzig business manager Johan Plenger says the club is excited to expand its football market as it prepares for its first ever post-season tour to South Africa. The Bundesliga outfit is to face the Premier Soccer League giants Mamelodi Sundowns on the 29th of May.
What I want to say is there's a lot of first times, and this is now the first time that we have the pleasure to go to South Africa, and that's a market from our perspective that at the latest since the World Cup 2010 is very well known in Germany for its it's warm atmosphere, it's joyful football, it's amazing fans. The vuvuzelas we have still in our ears that we heard 16 years ago. So we really appreciate now to do this step to come to a next market. And obviously there are always several reasons to do so. First of all, first and primarily, it's about football, right? So after going to the US, after going to Brazil, now going to South Africa, and having our first footprint in a new market, and having this not just as RB Leipzig, but as a Bundesliga club, and just as you mentioned, as a part of the world of Red Bull, is something that is big for all of us.
And that's the RB Leipzig Chief Business Officer, Johan Plenger, here on the Morning Brief. Now, just a reminder, in case you have forgotten, the FIFA World Cup 2026 will take place from the 11th of June to the 19th of July. The tournament will be broadcast live on SABC3, SABC Plus, and SABC radio stations. Let's go to the UEFA Champions League last 16. There were goals and big results across Europe. Arsenal, they drew 1-1 with Bayer Leverkusen, while Bodo Glimt stunned Sporting 3-0. Paris Saint-Germain thrashing Chelsea 5-2, and Real Madrid beating Manchester City 3-0 to take control of their tie. On to cricket, Zubair Hamza struck his second consecutive century as the DP World Lions secured a bonus point victory over the Dolphins in their Cricket South Africa One-Day Cup match, and it took place at the Wanderers. Hamza finished unbeaten on 119, guiding the Lions to a 7-wicket win, chasing 240. And finally, golf. Kristina Napoliova leads the Jabra Ladies Classic after opening with a 5-under par 67 at the Killarney Country Club. She holds a 2-shot lead over South Africa's Danielle du Toit and Eswatini's Nobuhle Dlamini, who both carded 3-under par 69s. That's your sport. Swing back, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Good morning, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, the United Nations Security Council has passed a resolution condemning attacks by Iran on the Arab Gulf states and Jordan. A text put forward by the Gulf countries makes no mention of airstrikes by the US and Israel. Commissioner Sandile Khumalo has raised concerns at the Madlanga Commission that top police officials appear to have close relations with members of criminal syndicates. And International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola says the new U.S. ambassador to South Africa, Brent Bozell, has been demarched to explain his anti-diplomatic comments in public. A demarche is a diplomatic message, sometimes signifying protest or displeasure. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. A couple of major delays on some very high volume routes today. We start in Joburg, the run in from Protea Glen and Lenasia. The N12 is heavy. There's a crash at what they call a slip and slide, or Dead Man's Bend, if you like. You'll know it. It's the N12 where you come off the Potch Highway onto the N1 to turn up towards Devlin and Diepkloof. That's where the crash is on that N12 eastbound. It's a very heavy queue pushing back towards the Lenasia exits. You might want to just reroute through Soweto, or perhaps take your chances out on Nirvana Drive out towards Aiken through the construction there, but stay off the N12. It is a heavy backlog. The other issues that we're dealing with, the N3 out of Durban to Pietermaritzburg stays closed effectively now from Shongweni right through Key Ridge and right up to the Cliffdale area. Big truck carrying hazardous load overturning a few hours ago, and it's overturned right across all lanes, so nothing getting through. Big queues from Marion Hill Plaza side up towards the closure at Shongweni, and all those alternative routes like the Mike 1 Richmond Road coming off the N3 out towards Fields Hill and the old main road through Hillcrest. Those alternative routes are busy and slow with all that additional traffic. The other issue, if you're going up Fields Hill on the divert around the N3 closure, is you'll see a lot of traffic coming down Fields Hill from Kloof. That's a vehicle that's overturned and lost its load just after Pioneer Road towards sort of Tracy Watts Road. Very heavy coming out of Kloof on your way towards Fields Hill towards that one. And the M7 Bluff bound queuing up from the N2 down towards Bel Air and Wakesley. There was a crash there a little bit earlier this morning. Could well be that holding it up. Cape Town fairly heavy, particularly the N2 inbound at Khayelitsha, then from the airport through to Mowbray Main, and coming out of Tableview, heads up. Give yourself time to get through this one. No traffic lights. Bloberg Road and Kuberg Road. That's already pushing back deep into Tableview. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
I used to live in Tableview. It took an hour, the best of times, to get into town on a morning. Let's find out what's happening in the business. And Ntauling Lachela joins us again. And oil reserves being released across the world almost. What's happening?
Morning, John. Now, the global energy watchdog, the International Energy Agency, says its member countries will release around 400 million barrels of oil from emergency reserves. Now, this marks the largest coordinated stock release in history to ease the impact of the Middle East conflict. Now, strategic reserves are government-held stockpiles of crude stored in underground caverns, tanks, or depleted oil reserves, and they serve as an emergency buffer during wars, natural disasters, or major supply disruptions to stabilize markets and curb price spikes. As part of the coordinated effort, we also saw President Trump ordering the release of 172 million barrels from the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which will be delivered over 120 days. The U.S. also plans to replenish 200 million barrels within the next year. Now, this emergency release surpasses the 182 million barrels deployed in 2022 after Russia invaded Ukraine, just underlying the scale of the current disruption. Despite this being done, not doing much to calm nerves as oil continues to trade above $100 a barrel.
What does all of this have on the US inflation numbers came out?
So we saw those U.S. inflation numbers coming out yesterday, steady in February at 2.4%. When looking at core CPI, which excludes food and energy, that increased 0.2% monthly and 2.5% annually, all in line with expectations. Digging deeper into that print, we saw shelter costs ticking up slightly, while prices for goods like used cars and auto insurance falling modestly. Now, the report suggests that inflation in the U.S. is stable, but still above the Fed's 2% target, providing some relief after months of higher prices pressures. And just going back to your point, what that means in terms of those oil prices, we do see the outlook for inflation being clouded by the recent spike in crude prices following the war in the Gulf. Higher oil costs could feed through to fuel, or what Americans call gas, transportation, and consumer goods, potentially pushing headline inflation higher in the coming months. Now, the Fed meets next week and is expected to hold rates, monitoring how geopolitical tensions affect the economy.
And do we want to know what's happening in the markets this morning?
I mean, we don't want to know, but I have to tell you, right? Trade has really been choppy, John, and this despite the International Energy Agency releasing strategic oil reserves to somewhat calm nerves amid supply shocks due to the war in the Middle East. That, as I mentioned, that not doing enough to convince investors. And so stocks closed in the red stateside overnight. A similar picture playing out here at home. Adding to that was a pullback in precious metal prices, which also weighed on our miners, resulting in the all share closing 1.85% in the red. The rand also caught up in this sour sentiment. This morning, it is under pressure, mainly because the dollar is stronger as it becomes the safe haven of choice. The rand sitting at 16.61 to the greenback, 22.21 to the pound, and 19.17 to the euro. As I mentioned, the oil still powering through, ticking higher this morning, trading above $100 a barrel, despite those emergency reserves being released. Over in Asia, it is following that a similar picture that's playing out when it comes to riskier assets in the red as investors continue to monitor what's playing out in the Gulf region.
Ntalo Nglatshela, thank you very much. More business coming up in an hour's time. And there is some good news, I believe. Rainbow Chicken's looking good, and Outsurance also got some good news. That's coming up later on.
Africa Update on SAFM.
See what's happening on the continent. Good morning, Sipho Mantula. And the SADC Council of Ministers are here in South Africa. What are they going to be doing?
Refreshing morning, John, coming to you live from Limpopo River in the border of Botswana and South Africa, John. I'm on top of the crocodile. It has rained even this morning, John, in Limpopo. An important meeting of SADC, John, today and tomorrow at Oliver Tambo HQ of DIRCO, where there's a meeting of Council of Ministers. So Council of Ministers, John, are made out of Ministers of Foreign Affairs, Ministers of Trade and Industry, Ministers of Finance also, to look at the issues of SADC. As you know, that South Africa abruptly was elected to chair the SADC. Now, the 45th theme of the summit is still on three areas: industrialization, agriculture, and energy transition. Now, this meeting is very important, John, because South Africa will be also chairing next year the SADC. So it is 2 years in a row, and also the role of South Africa in the Peace and Security Council. So the meeting of today is also touching geopolitics, John, the current issues of the Middle East. How do they affect the SADC region? The conflict in DRC, how does the SADC manage that conflict of Eastern DRC? So Minister Lamola will be chairing that meeting. Hence I said to you, John, it's not all about Bozelle and demarching. It's all about the continent also this week at Oliver Tambo building.
And I see Brazzaville, Congo having elections in a few days.
Congo Brazzaville decides in 3 days, John, on Sunday, and as they are wrapping tomorrow all their election campaigns, it is interesting to look at the candidates. 7 candidates are running for the presidency. There's one candidate who has run for 4 times, never got it. Ngambi is the president of Party for Action of the Republic. Also, I see the 1/5 time also has been running. Joseph Kia Mbongu has been running for that, but the old man, Dennis Sosungwesu, is expected to extend his lead again. And he has a coalition of more than 20 political parties. He has been in office for many years, more than 3 decades, John. And that's why others are saying that he might be back again in office, despite what has been going on in terms of his performance. Has he performed? Is there employment opportunities for young people, infrastructure? But others are calling this an invisible one who will emerge also on the 15th of March.
So very important, because they've got oil, and the way things are going in the Middle East is so important for the globe now as well.
Absolutely, John. We'll touch on it on Friday. The issues of what are the benefits and the advantages and the disadvantages when you have a conflict in the Middle East, and what can African countries benefit out of, or be part of assisting the global world.
I see Kenya are looking to look at digital innovation with TikTok in the spotlight.
John, the digital age and digital information, actually where I am now, we're engaging it yesterday and today in terms of how do we bring digital age, or how do we deal with digital creativity. Now in Kenya, there was a meeting that was called by the government. Our South African government was represented by the minister in the presidency, Kenny Morolong. But now Kenya is looking at the future of this digital innovation. TikTok, John, yes, you can think it's jokes, but government is looking at how they can improve it. But I'm worried on 2 things, John. There's data privacy, there's data sovereignty, digital literacy. What is it that we are putting there? Are we no longer reading and we are just absorbing this robotics or this internet spaces? But also they're talking about 3 issues: misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation, John. These are the issues that when you are in the social media spaces, we need to check. But this meeting in Kenya, very important, looking even at the global relations, looking at the 4th industrial revolution. And that's where I think the young people will have to learn a lot about this digital, what we call digital sovereignty. Others, they call it digital colonization also.
What was the last one you used? Malinformation.
Yeah, there's malinformation, John. We use disinformation, misinformation, outformation, and information, John. Those aspects you play with these theories, but it's how young people, it affects them in terms of malinformation and disinformation once more.
What I like about this is they're including digital creators in this conversation. It's not just regulators that are sitting in their ivory towers. They're actually calling the people that are making the content as well.
Absolutely, John. You have to bring the young people because they are on it, and you have to bring those who are behind it their sins, and also remind them of communication limits, John. Because whatever we are communicating, you can see the AI with the conflicts in the Middle East, how it's playing fake news there, John. And we end up communicating something that is wrong, even sharing of images that are not correct images sometimes. And this creation of AI, which I've been critical on it in this conference, John, I call it ancestral intelligence, not artificial intelligence. I've been shifting it's just a bit of saying we have ancestral intelligence in Africa. We don't need robotics and take away our knowledge.
All right, you got a couple of historical archives today. What have you got for us?
So today in Mauritius, it's a public holiday. The Republic of Mauritius, 58 years ago, was liberated from its colonizer UK in 1968. But also 1992, they turned from being a Mauritius to become a Republic of Mauritius 34 years ago. So it's a public holiday in Mauritius. When you think of Mauritius, John, you have Chinese, there you have Indians, Africans, European immigrants, and all those who are called indigenous people of Mauritius. So today, it's a public holiday in Mauritius. You look back, John, again, 1990, 36 years ago, after almost 28 years, the late Tata Rolihlahla Mandela meets with his old friend, Comrade Oliver Reginald Tambo in Sweden, John. The meeting in Sweden was important because Oliver Tambo was just coming out of a Swedish clinic, John, after a stroke, that he was attacked by a stroke in August in the previous year. So it was an important meeting of these two ANC presidents when they met in Sweden, and just after Mandela's release, John, because when you look at the dates, Mandela had to travel Zambia, Tanzania, Ethiopia, and Zimbabwe, and Sweden was the last stop. Asante Sana, John, as still in the conversation, coming to you live from Limpopo River, John, across the border. Get yourself in order.
Sipho Mantula, thank you very much. It's 6:45.
This February, love staying informed. As your day winds down and the evening begins, Primetime News moves to a new home. Weekdays at 6 p.m. The stories that matter, the context you trust, the news that connect you to South Africa and the world. Because loving what you watch also means trusting what you hear. Primetime News is weeknights at 8 p.m. only on S3. Open up. S3.
The KwaZulu-Natal Department of Social Development will host the Partnership Summit taking place on the 12th and 13th of March 2026 in Durban. Hosted under the theme Driving a Skills Revolution, Emergency Job Creation and Inclusive Growth through Strategic Partnerships. The summit marks a bold shift from a welfareist dependency model towards a developmental social protection approach. The department is calling on business leaders, investors, CETAs, government entities, non-profit organizations, chambers of commerce and civil society to co-invest in human potential and community resilience. For more information on the summit, please contact the Department of Social Development on 072-105-8420 or venetia.nwamu@kzndsd.gov.za. KZNDSD, we serve with humility. Call us on 086 000 2032.
Morning, Mr. John. Bongo, Sundisa, Mbuyisa here. Mr. John, you see in Cape Town during winter, it's a rainy season. It rains a lot and then people's houses are always flooded. So can they please create a position for a chief rain officer, please, so that it can help people like to be aware of the heavy rains during the winter season? Thanks.
Good morning, John. And that's him. Good show as always. John, what's on my mind today is the comment made by Mr. Pozelle, the ambassador of USA to South Africa. I don't think that is acceptable, John. Considering that Mr. Ibrahim Rasool was fired by the USA for making comments, I think the South Africans must take a stand, John, and fire this man. That's my comment. Thank you, PK.
Okay, we're going to have that conversation around 8:45 today. We're going to talk to Professor Patrick Bond, who's a professor at the University of Johannesburg on that issue. So stay close for that one. One more voice note. Zig, we're coming to you in a moment.
Hi, John. It's Mr. Suleiman. John, I want to speak about the armies going into the places where the gangsters are worrying the communities. I think they have to clean the community out. The people who are committing this crime is not the good people of the community. So the army need to clean these communities out. And Johnson has got a problem with that. And I would say to him, he must understand that the community needs to be cleaned out properly so they have a good life. Thank you, John.
Going to have that conversation right about 7:15. We're going to get a couple of angles on that. Helmut Hittman is a defense consultant, and then we'll talk to the ward councillor of Eldorado Park, Ward 18, and get views on exactly what they feel about the military in the townships. That's coming up. It's 12 minutes to 7. Let's go to one calls for now. Zig in Randburg, what do you want to say?
I was very, very impressed to see those beautiful army vehicles driving into Joburg like they used to be doing in the bad old days of the apartheid system. Now, those are the same army vehicles that left the Congo in utter disgrace. Are they now going to be able to save our primary school kids from the drug trafficking promoted by the crime intelligence? Yes, our police, crime intelligence are the drug trafficking leaders in South Africa. They let them get away, and the local police stations help them as well with the drug trafficking and prostitution of our primary school kids who are behind the gun violence. And now we have the army saving us from the crime intelligence, are we?
Zig in Randburg, thank you very much. It's 10 minutes to 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Let's get an update on the N12 leaving Lenasia and Protea Glen. Earlier crash at the Dead Men's Bend, as they call it. That's the N12 Potch Highway onto the M1. That's all been sorted out. That traffic flow looking a lot better now. It's busy. It's a high volume route as you come along the N12, up on the N1 through Devland and on your way towards Deepcliff Interchange. So it is heavy, but the crash is out of the way. Tell you what's been really bad last couple of days and is again this morning. It's the N3 coming up from Phosphorus and Spruitview. Big traffic up towards the Heidelberg Road off-ramp there. N17 queuing this morning approaching Brakpan. That's a single lane section for roadworks, which is catching a lot of people out this morning. Pretoria, the mighty Mount Polly Highway, slow at XX, but that's recovering. And no traffic lights. Jan Haynes, right in the heart of Gazina. So if you're coming down through Vanderboom Pass area on your way to Gazina, that's quite heavy. No change on the N3, getting out of Durban to Pietermaritzburg. It's a full closure from Shongweni right through to Cliffdale for recovery of an overturned hazardous chemical truck. It overturned earlier this morning, lying across the highway. The road is completely closed. A lot of backlogging going on there, off at Shongweni, up on the Cassia Road, the M13 up towards Boerters Hill, the Richmond Road coming off the N3 down to Fields Hill. Anything that acts as an alternative route is obviously very, very busy. So just be aware of extra time to get out of Durban through Pietermaritzburg this morning. Also a crash coming out of Kloof on Fields Hill, just past Pioneer Road towards Tracy Watt. So that's quite heavy. And the M7 is queuing quite badly from Queensborough down towards Bel Air and Wakesley Road this morning. Cape Town, no traffic lights. Baden-Powell Drive at the N2. If you're on your way to Stellenbosch, that's heavy. Kuiberg Road and Bloberg Road is offline. Coming out of Tableview, that run down Bloberg Road towards the refinery is really bad. And there's a big backlog of traffic this morning. There was last night coming out of Stellenbosch. If you're turning around going back, R44 at Annandale Road. It's a problem there. Somerset West to Stellenbosch, heavy backlogs. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable. You receive up to 745,000 rand worth of legal services per year. Our range of plans include cover for you, your spouse, children, and extended family. Plans include cover for civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Whether it's protection orders, gender-based violence, uncontested divorce, or poor service, your Clientele Legal lawyer will be there to assist you. Our services are convenient. Simply pick up the phone and call your lawyer or send us an email and we'll get back to you. All plans include a bail benefit of up to 5,000 rand and we'll go to the police station and pay it for you. Plus, Clientele Legal offers you 24-hour telephonic legal advice. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
This February, love staying informed. As your day winds down and the evening begins, Primetime News moves to a new home. Weekdays at 6 p.m. The stories that matter, the context you trust, the news that connects you to South Africa and the world. Because loving what you watch also means trusting what you hear. Primetime News is weeknights at 8 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
The only talk radio morning breakfast show that makes sense. The Morning Brief.
John Carrick in for Tulis. Good morning to you. Now, the Public Servants Association has voiced strong support for a proposed insourcing bill. It's before Parliament. They say it could help tackle long-standing service delivery failures and labour issues caused by outsourcing to the public. Ruben Maleke is the General Manager of the Public Service Association. Why do you support it? I know I gave a brief headline. Give us some details of why you support this bill.
And the listeners of SAFM, we absolutely support the insourcing bill. It has been a long-standing call that the state must have ability to fulfill its constitutional mandate without relying on contracts and tenders. We have been calling that the outsourcing has actually crippled the state, and majority of the employees that are outsourced, which means the security, cleaning, gardening, maintenance, etc., are the most vulnerable category of employees that in many instances they would not even have a stable employment, they would not have benefits, and from time to time they would know that for the rest of their life they would not have anything that they can look after when they retire. So we welcome the tabled insourcing bill, and that will create a stable capacity of the state to render the service to the public.
Do we have the management and the HR capabilities to be able to insource all of these services?
Absolutely. If you go back, some years before the issue of tender and outsourcing was a fashion in the public service, the public service itself was capable of delivering and maintaining roads, maintaining, every, kind of, function of the state was capable of being rendered by the public servants. So we believe at this stage that the state itself has got very good capacity. Look at what is happening in departments such as health, where many instances the outsourcing of cleaners has created a serious backlog, and sometimes even, the department being sued for various reasons. So if you've got capable full-time employees of the state, let's say a cleaner that is responsible for ICU, you know that this person is well-trained, the person is available, to the state to render a service. So those are the things that we believe that is the reason why the state requires its full capacity than relying on outsourced services.
You spoke about the labour concerns when it is outsourced. I know it's a separate issue, but should there not be strong views on that or looking at that? If there are poor working conditions, lower wages, benefits, surely we should be looking at the private sector that are doing these mistakes as well.
Yes, of course. Remember, let me take you back, John, to say where we are today, as you know, that there's this investigation commission of Madlanga and the ad hoc committee of parliament. Majority of everything that is being discussed there is about the outsourced services of the state. So that also has brought in, it was a breeding ground of corruption and also inflation. People are inflating prices simply because they need to benefit from the state. So in a way, bringing back the services to the state would capacitate the state, would also create employment, because everybody now is been making a statement that the state does not create jobs. In fact, it's the private sector. But the public service, for many years, every family in every village would have somebody that is a public servant, and that created stability within families. And since the outsourcing, and everybody now being privatized, it has created poverty and unemployment for the youth. Let's go back to the public service, the capable public service that has got capacity to render the services to the public.
I've got a number here of 1 trillion rand spent annually on public procurement. So that money, just so I understand it, instead of spending that on private sector, will now come into the government and they can use salaries and making sure everybody has a good job.
Absolutely. Remember the 1 trillion that is being spent. Let's give an example of the rate at which Madlanga would come out with the findings about how prices were inflated, how corruption was prevalent. That is going to save a lot of government's resources and the state funds to an extent that even those who rely on social grant after employment. Remember, these people that are outsourced, they don't have benefits such as pension fund. After being employed, they're 60 years, they are discarded by the outsourced services. They end up again into the system where they must be looked after by the state through the grant system. So, but if the state itself, we know the state has got a very good pension which is under the Government Employee Pension Fund, then we know that at least those that are public servants would probably never be able to come back into the system and rely on social grants. So it is the ecosystem that will resolve its many problems that the state finds itself in.
Is this not going to hurt small business that have now sprung out of being able to do this procurement and do these jobs and have outsourced work?
Look, we're not completely saying that everything else must be stopped in terms of outsourcing and tendering. The outsourcing must be able to go out where there is no capacity or there's a good reason for a short-term project that would not necessarily require a full-time public servants. Then outsourcing is relevant. But it cannot be true that there should be a blanket outsourcing of certain services that are actually of permanent nature and can be rendered by a public servant. There are specialized services that obviously the state would not have capacity to render or even have capacity to recruit for a short or long term. Therefore, outsourcing will be relevant.
Ruben Maleka, thank you very much. General Manager of the Public Servants Association. You're with SAFM, it's exactly 7 o'clock.
Outsurance is in the business of saving you money on your car insurance premium. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754.
In our top stories, UN Security Council adopts resolution condemning Iran's attacks in the Gulf, and flight price increases looming as jet fuel costs skyrocket. Good morning. The United Nations Security Council has passed a resolution condemning attacks by Iran on the Arab Gulf states and Jordan. A text put forward by the Gulf countries makes no mention of airstrikes by the US and Israel. China and Russia abstained. The Iranian ambassador to the UN, Amir Sahid Iravani, gave this reaction.
This resolution is a manifest injustice against my country, the main victim of a clear act of aggression. It distorts the realities on the ground and deliberately ignores the root causes of the current crisis. It rewards the regimes of the United States and Israel, which have violated the UN Charter and committed act of aggression.
South African travellers are likely to soon face significantly higher flight rates after jet fuel costs increase by approximately 70% at two of South Africa's three major airports. Cape Town International Airport and King Shaka International Airport in Durban have both raised the cost of Jet A1 fuel in response to the growing fuel costs due to the conflict in the Middle East. Domestic airline FlySafair earlier announced it would introduce a temporary fuel surcharge on ticket prices as a result. The surcharge will come into effect today and will apply only to flights departing on or before the 12th of May. Aviation expert Lyndon Burns says South African Scootsie Airlines implementing a number of changes in the coming weeks in an effort to mitigate fuel costs.
The other way in which airlines can also mitigate costs, obviously, would be to try and consolidate flights, reduce the number of flights that they have, try and make sure that they're maximizing and filling their aircraft that they do have, not flying them as often. We're not seeing airlines moving to those levels yet because there's still plenty of demand for air travel. But if we find that the economy does take a serious turn to the left and things get worse, then I think we'll start seeing demand for travel, and especially discretionary travel, start to fall. And then we might see airlines reducing their capacity.
Commissioner Sandile Khumalo has raised concerns at the Madlanga Commission that top police officials appear to have close relations with members of criminal syndicates. His comments follow suspended head of organised crime, Major General Richard Shibiri's testimony that he and attempted murder accused Fuzimuzi Matlala had a cordial relationship. Advocate Khumalo asked Shibiri to place himself in the shoes of families who have lost loved ones to crime.
Now, if you were family members of all these crime victims and you are listening to the evidence that the Commission is hearing, that head of organized crime in the country and some very senior generals, including the Deputy Commissioner of Police, are actually good friends with these people who are alleged to have committed these crimes, what confidence would you have in the police? If you are family members of these people who are victims of this crime, what confidence would you have in the police?
The defense lawyer in the case of 6 people accused in a series of alleged insurance-related murders linked to former police officer Rachel Kutumela says his clients will apply for bail at their next court appearance. They are facing 47 charges after allegedly orchestrating the murders of 9 people to fraudulently claim insurance payouts worth more than 10 million rand. Their co-accused and the first accused in the matter, Kutumela, was arrested in 2024. Advocate Moses Mantata maintains his clients should be granted bail.
These accused are the first offender, and being the first offender, meaning that they don't have any criminal case against them. So the possibility of them being given bail is available to them. Charge is a charge alone. Those are the allegations. It will have to be proved in the court of law. At this moment, we are facing the allegation, which need to be approved by the court of law, whether that's true or not.
And finally, International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola says the new U.S. Ambassador to South Africa, Brent Bozell, has been démarché to explain his anti-diplomatic comments in public. A démarche is a diplomatic message, sometimes signifying protest or displeasure. He says Pretoria is open to diplomatic engagements, but it cannot allow other countries to disrespect the sovereignty of South Africa. Ambassador Bozell, who was speaking on other media platforms, said the U.S. had raised concerns about the Expropriation Act and the BBBEE policies and has not received a response from government. Lamola says this is unacceptable.
The Department of International Relations and Cooperation has noted recent public remarks made by the United States Ambassador to South Africa. While South Africa welcomes active public diplomacy and the strengthening of bilateral ties, we emphasize that such engagements must remain consistent with established diplomatic etiquette and international protocols. In this regard, we have called in the Ambassador of the United States, Ambassador Bozelli, to explain his undiplomatic remarks.
Recapping the top story, the United Nations Security Council has passed a resolution condemning attacks by Iran on the Arab Gulf states and Jordan. A text put forward by the Gulf countries makes no mention of airstrikes by the US and Israel. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754.
With Outsurance, saving your car insurance feels like scoring the last cinnamon donut at the bakery. 45-year-old Nivan saves an unbelievable 461 Rand a month on his 2025 Volkswagen T-Cross. Get a quote now, and if Outsurance can't save you money, ask for 500 Rand or 1,500 Rand if you have been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. Get savings or cash. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. Outsurance, a licensed insurer, and FSP. T's and C's and information online.
Very good morning to you. In your SFM Sports headlines, soccer, Orlando Pirates reclaim the top spot in the Betway Premiership after beating Richards Bay 2-0. And in cricket, the Proteas women's star Nadine de Klerk lands a multi-million rand deal at the 100 auction. We'll have the details around 7:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very good morning. If you're driving into Joburg from Lenasia, Protea Glen, the N12 crash scene at the N1 highway, which caused a major backlog earlier. That scene has been cleared. Traffic is busy, but moving fairly normally through there now. The Mike 1 from Boysons all the way through to Melrose is pretty heavy. Queues on the N12 approaching the Edenvale exit. If you're coming out of Benoni, there's a queue to Atlas Road, and then from Craft Road down to Edenvale. That looks pretty heavily backed up. The N3 north at Sprayview remains heavy as well up to the Heidelberg Road. Durban to Pietermaritzburg, no change. The N3 is closed at Shongweni right through to Cliffdale. Enormous pressure all around this closure. Queues into Shongweni. Queues on the M13 down to the closure at Key Ridge. Routes like Cassia Road, the M13 from Hillcrest up Boerters Hill, the Richmond Road off the N3 up towards Fields Hill. All of those diversion routes are under pressure this morning. Also a crash on Fields Hill and a lost load on your way to Pinetown. So that's heavy from Hillcrest into Kloof and on towards Pinetown. Very big backlogs there. Also the M7 bluffbound standing from Queensborough down towards Bel Air and Wakesley Road coming north into the M7 highway, very slow as well. Cape Town, the N7 south queuing up heavily between Plattercliff Road and the N1 highway. No lights on the Bloberg Road at Kuberg Road, backing you up out of Tableview. No lights on the N7 north at Langa at Blue Gum Road, so delays coming through from Vangate Mall through Langa on your way slowly towards Epping. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
The Morning Brief, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
Morning to you. John Gericke in for Tulas this morning. He's out today and tomorrow, so I'll be back again then. It's 10 minutes past 7. Welcome to the show. Coming up in a moment, we're going to have a conversation about the Defence Force in the townships in South Africa. There was a deployment yesterday. We saw those videos, I'm sure. Going to get a couple of views on that. We'll take your views on that as well. What do you make of these, of the deployment of the military? We've had one voice note already saying it was a great idea. I think Zigan Randberg being a little sarcastic with his call earlier. As always, phone lines open 086 000 2032. You can send a WhatsApp on 0614 104 107. Now, though, let's talk about this social media post that went live. That you must have seen this. This was Deputy Minister and ANC MP Bernice Swartz talking about or handing out loaves of bread to families, displaying ANC colours and branding, creating that the impression was the distribution formed part of an official party campaign. Let's find out more with Mahlengi Bengu Motsiri, ANC national spokesperson. In fact, we're going to Helmut first. We're going to go to what's happening with the Defence Force. I'm hoping to get hold of the ANC and talk about that video. That's coming up in a moment. Now, though, let's talk about the National Defence Force. They've been deployed, as you heard, many, many times to support the police service in tackling the crime, the gang violence, illegal mining across several hotspots in South Africa. Helmut Hitman is a defence consultant and analyst. Helmut, what do you make of this initial deployment that's happened in the township so far?
Look, on the one hand, I think it was inevitable. The police aren't coping, partly because we have too few police in the country and they're underfunded, but also partly because the police has had some very strange senior appointments. As to the military itself, look, I think it was inevitable, and most countries have similar provisions. But one problem is that it immediately sends a message to foreign investors that the government has lost control of its country, which is not good. The other issue is, of course, that troops don't particularly like doing that sort of work. They're not really trained or equipped for it, so it always makes life just a little bit difficult. But you can get around that as long as people understand that it is not something that will fix the situation. All an army deployment can do is buy some time for detectives to do their homework, arrest the people who actually run syndicates, arrest the ringleaders, get them out of the system, and then start following up with normal detective work and normal police patrolling. The military is not going to solve the problem. It's a band-aid.
There was also talk about training the police to be able to take over and start doing correct work in these areas where there are these problems. Is that going to be done?
Look, I think that may have been a bit of a misunderstanding. I think the Army aren't really specifically trained for this role. So a couple of things will have to happen. The troops that haven't been deployed in support of the police first have to be briefed and instructed on how you work with the police. For instance, this story, do they take orders from the police or not? The answer is no. They will work at the direction of the police. Police officers say we need that area cordoned off, and then Army officers will deploy their troops and do their thing. It's not a policeman walking down and saying to a soldier, you go and stand there. That's the one thing they have to be trained for. That some will have to be trained for things like what you do in a cordon and search situation. When somebody tries to walk through the cordon, how do you stop them? What do you do about it? The other issue is terrain. Now, some troops have already been deployed against the Zamas. They will understand how it works in that terrain. I don't know if they're going to use the same units again. Others, if you go into a built-up area, how do you do it? How do you set up a checkpoint? How do you protect the detective team that's going to raid somewhere? If they're high-rise buildings, do you put somebody on a roof? Do you just use a drone to see who's on the roof? That sort of thing. It'll be a case-by-case, basically adapting tactical drills to the situation. It's not trying to train them to be policemen. That they can't do. I mean, they've had 9 months to do that.
Have measurable outcomes been put in place?
Look, I'm not so sure anything serious has happened yet. They've done some raids. I suppose something useful happened there. In the past, the deployment of the police, be it against the Army, be it against the Zamas, or for instance in Cape Town, in the past it's done what I said it could do. It has bought time for detectives to do their work. It has disrupted the crime syndicates for a while. It has brought some peace and quiet for people who live in gang-ridden areas, but has not produced a long-term solution, and it can't do that.
And there's always this worry about human rights. The Army, as we've been told many times, are trained to kill. Will the human rights be respected by these military personnel?
Look, generally they will. I mean, every army in the world has got its thugs and they step out of line. But generally soldiers will. I mean, most soldiers I've known over the donkey's years now, and a couple of soldiers I've met more recently, they see themselves as citizens of the country too. They don't see themselves as something entirely separate from the rest of the country. So most of them behave. Most NCOs and officers will insist they behave and make sure they do. But yes, there's always a risk somebody will step out of line. But then so do some police. I've seen a video clip a couple of years back down where I live of a police sergeant, a constable, beating and kicking a man lying on the ground, unable to defend himself. It happens. Again, you get thugs in the police like you get thugs in the army. Most of them will behave. If somebody tries something violent with soldiers, then the situation changes a bit. They're not really trained to be able to take you to a patient, quiet, non-hurtful takedown. They'll probably shoot the guy.
Almut Hitman.
And then some people might shout and scream, but it'll be the right guy to get shot anyway.
Almut Hitman, defense consultant and analyst. Thanks very much for your views. We're going to get views from the ground. Eldorado Park, Ward 18 councillor in a moment.
Wait till you hear how much money OUTsurance saves 30-year-old Dineo on her car insurance.
I'm saving 1,094 rands.
That's an incredible monthly saving of 1,094 rand on Dineo's 2025 Kia Sonet. SMS out to 30754. Here's 63-year-old Almero.
We do save 417 rand. That's about 5,000 rand a year.
That's an awesome saving on Almero's 2021 Ford Ranger. Get a quote now. SMS out to 30754. With OUTsurance, after 3 claim-free years, you get an out bonus.
Can't wait for that. A little bit of cash for a girl to have a little bit of fun, eh?
Always getting something out. You also get 5 million rand third-party liability cover, covering damage to the other person's vehicle in an accident. How much could OUTsurance save you? Get a quote now. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. Licensed insurer in FSP. TCs and information online.
As you're getting to wherever you're going, all these trucks you're dodging, that's billions of rands in motion. Imagine that flow stopping because drivers must swap SIMs for better signal. That's an expensive pause that your business can't afford. Don't let bad tech choices get in the way. Switch to a reliable, stable network because nothing should stop your business. Call 084 1234. Cell C.
Sorry I'm late, Sevi. Had to fetch my lucky putter.
No worries, let's go. We're teeing off in an hour.
Great. We're taking your car.
Can't. It's already taken.
What do you mean taken? It was right here when I left a few minutes ago.
I sold it to We Buy Cars and made a whole lot of green.
Bertie told me that's the best way to sell your car.
Not only the best way, it's the fair way. Kom ons vat die pad.
Don't be doof, be savvy. We buy cars geared for a fast sale, geared for you.
The only talk radio morning breakfast show that makes sense. The Morning Brief.
17 minutes past 7. So armoured vehicles and soldiers from the Defence Force rolled into Eldorado Park on Wednesday. Jaiwaria Kaldeen is the Eldorado Park Ward 18 councillor. What do you make of the army in your township there, Jaiwaria?
Good morning, John. Trust you are well, and good morning to the listeners. Let me jump right into it. As the ward councillor and the community, we are grateful and we are thankful. Because for the longest of time, Eldorado Park SAPS has been on the news for their non-delivery in this community. I saw some statements yesterday on social media saying that the president deployed SANDF because it's clear that SAPS is not delivering, and that is true. They are not delivering, not only in Eldorado Park, but various colored communities where gangsterism and gun violence is rife. But my concern, John, with regards to the arrival of the army.
I seem to have lost Jaiwaria.
Sorry,
Jaiwaria, you disappeared there. Sorry, you disappeared. You said you had a worry about?
My concern, John, is that, the army arrived yesterday, and I'm going to call it a shit show. I'm going to call it exactly for what it is. They arrived. People were taking pictures, people were taking videos, content was created, it was shared on social media, and that automatically tells me that there's no plan of action. And we want a plan of action. We are suffering in this community. We are really suffering. We have lost 237 youth in the last 3 years in Eldorado Park. 237 mothers have lost their sons to gang violence. And the army comes here and allows community to take pictures and create content. Criminals are on group chat. Criminals are on social media. Criminals are watching the news. They plot and they scheme. So automatically when the army arrived yesterday, every criminal knew that the army arrived. It gave them an opportunity, John, to go to another area, to go and hide, or to take the unlicensed firearms and go and hide it. This is not what we asked for. We asked for the army to come and enforce the South African Constitution, to enforce the law. That is what we asked for. We were one of the communities that said, #it's the army or nothing, because we don't have a police station that is enforcing the Constitution or enforcing the law or teaching citizens what our law is about. It is just lawlessness at every corner of Eldorado Park. Grade 1 learners have to drop their bags, lose their bags in the interim because they have to run and dodge bullets. That is the reality of Eldorado Park. Just yesterday, John, after the army left Eldorado Park, because they came in here, they were here for an hour and they left. I think they went to Rivoli and they went to Westbury where they had successes. We had a gang fight outside of Kliptown Secondary School. The schools, the gangsterism has now infiltrated into the schools. At first it was outside of the schools. Today we're sitting with a challenge that it's now inside of the schools. The educators have now become victims of this gangsterism and gang fight.
It's supposed to be for a couple of months, Jaiwaria. Do you see this making any change?
John, I'm going to say to you now, I don't see a plan. We got excited for no reason. We got happy. This is a very disciplined community, I want to say. It's my second term as a ward councillor. And I always say I'm the luckiest councillor in the city of Johannesburg because I have a community that works with me. I have never received resistance from this community. And I don't see a plan of action. Why are they not consulting the people who have the information? We have safety clusters in our extensions that have been trying to resolve this issue without SAPS, without having a police station that works with stakeholders, that works with the CPF. that works with the crime prevention wardens. I mean, the Premier launched crime prevention wardens. What is their purpose of being here? Are we having SAPS lead a operation when SAPS is the actual criminals in our community? Because they are. SAPS are the criminals in this community. We have proof of it. It's not even a lie.
We need to leave it there. Jawaria Kaldeen is the Eldorado Park Ward 18 councillor. What do you make of that? 086 000 2032. You can send a WhatsApp to 0614 104 107.
This February, love the truth, no matter how unsettling it is. They were called accidents, a slip, a fall, a tragic mistake. But what if they weren't? Fatal fall, murder or accident investigates suspicious deaths. From balconies, staircases and cliffs, where one question refuses to go away. Did someone push them? Through forensic science and haunting testimony, the truth is uncovered. Fatal fall, murder or accident. Tuesdays 6 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
The Northwest Provincial Legislature Portfolio Committee on Premier and Finance, chaired by Honorable Nathan Oliphant, will conduct public hearings on the Northwest Appropriation Bill on 13 March 2026 at Bakerville Community Hall in Nakamudrimulema District, Boscale Community Hall, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda District, Dipudi Community Hall in Dr. Ruth Skhomutsi Mompati District, and Mohwase Recreational Center in Bujanala District. All hearings start at 10. If you are unable to attend in person, you can join the proceedings online via Microsoft Teams by scanning the QR code provided in the advert in newspapers or legislature social media pages.
Exciting news. South Africa SABC TV Licenses has partnered with Capitec to make paying your TV license simple, affordable and accessible. If you're a Capitec client, sign into the app and click on Transact. Next, select Pay Bills, then click Pay At and enter your reference number to complete your payment. It's as easy as that. You'll receive an instant SMS confirmation. Now you can keep your stories alive and your screens shining bright. TV Licenses, pay yours, make a difference.
Don Gerika on SAFM.
Talk about the US ambassador increasingly frustrated with South African government, he says, for failing to respond to 5 key points aimed at improving bilateral relations. A number of issues coming out of this story. He also criticized the kill the Boer, kill the farmer slogan. He's been demarched. Is that the correct word? Professor Patrick Bond is a distinguished professor of sociology at the University of Johannesburg, political economist, political ecologist, scholar of social mobilization. Prof, thank you very much for joining us. What do you make of the spat between the US ambassador and South Africa?
Warm greetings, John. Hi to the listeners. Yeah, it was predictable, wasn't it? I mean, this is a man who has said awful things, even about Donald Trump. He said, for example, that he's the, quote, greatest charlatan of them all, a huckster, a shameless self-promoter. This back 9 years ago, 2016, when Trump first ran. So he has a big mouth, and his big mouth in Hermanus at Business basically said, well, very simply, about the courts, I don't care. That sense that an ambassador from a regime that obviously doesn't care about international rules at the moment, bombing and killing and kidnapping, is now attention here in South Africa, especially on the Kill the Boer, the song that the courts recently judged. It was not, it's a symbolic song, a struggle song. It's not a matter of hate speech.
Is he allowed to have an opinion on that?
Well, diplomats shouldn't be quite as explicit. In fact, last March 14, I think it was, the ambassador Ibrahim Rasool from South Africa to Washington was fired by the new foreign minister there, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, for saying something, let's say, undiplomatic about Donald Trump, saying he was head of a supremacist. He didn't use the word white supremacist, but even that word supremacist then led Rubio to say, well, 7 days, you're out of town, you're fired. And we haven't replaced that ambassador. So yeah, this is pretty sensitive when you come in, especially with the reputation that Brent Bozell has as a right-wing ideologue and real marching orders from Trump to change policies. Well, you have to do that behind the scenes. You don't go to Biz News and make a big deal about it with the audience that they have.
Yeah, how much of this should be behind closed doors? And I'm using that word maybe incorrectly. When it comes to diplomacy, should it be quietly done amongst the political elite, or are these kind of public announcements commonplace?
We don't know his predecessor under the Biden regime. Remember Ruben Brigetti, who was a sort of an honest academic, an African American of high intellectual and diplomatic stature, we thought. But then he blurted out that he was certain that South Africa was uploading weapons onto the Lady R ship that had come to Simonstown, and he could never prove it. And he was asked. He was also demarched. He was also brought in and called to the carpet for it. So yeah, I think that's exactly the point. That if you're doing in an era like this one, in which you have a very erratic, volatile U.S. president, and lots of things have to be done. Scenes to warn, for example, had some sensible voices warned Trump about fighting Iran, he probably, would have had a much better sense of the enormous damage and the spillover, and maybe wouldn't have done it. And that is definitely behind the scenes, because a man like Trump and any bully trained in the U.S., I myself was, they kind of have a huge ego, and you have to sort of say things quietly, and that would be, I think, going back the other way too. I'm glad that Ronald Lamola and Zane Dangor, Lamola the foreign minister, Dangor the director general, I think they came out strong and said, you really can't do this. But I think a lot of other people, including economic freedom fighters, with a very strong statement saying there's a global context for this. As Sinawa Tambo said, we should be asking the ambassador about the bombing of Nigeria, about the kidnapping of Maduro, about the attacks on Iran, and all of the other things that the U.S. does. And that should actually where our attention is. I tend to agree with that. And a stronger statement saying, no, go home, guy. You're not wanted here would have been better.
Is it right to send the ambassador back, have him packing up and going back?
It would be a real tit for tat, wouldn't it? Because it's exactly that a year ago was done to Ibrahim Rasool, and there's certainly every evidence that even though the first couple of days of Ambassador Bozel's presence has included going to the Apartheid Museum, going to District 6 Museum. He's had fairly carefully scripted events. He's basically been managed by his speechwriters and advisors at the embassy. But when you let him go off on his own in a question and answer session, that's actually what kicked all of this off. And it just means you're dealing with quite a volatile character.
He's obviously got to. He's got to have the American view. That's his job. And America, as you say, has these fascinating views on the world, and where they're getting their information from leaves something to be desired. Is that not his job, though? Is to stir the pot from an American perspective?
Well, if it's to improve trade, investment, and financial relations, the kinds of things that most ambassadors are tasked with, this is not the right way to do it. I think, though, the other big question is, does he put the best side of the United States? I mean, right now, only 25% of people polled in the U.S. support the Trump and Netanyahu attack on Iran. There's so many big questions as to whether the ICE, that is the sort of Gestapo-type police coming down in communities like Minneapolis, or the economic management of the country and the cutting of medical aid, whether Trump really can say, with the popularity rating around 36%, sort of historic low, that he is doing the bidding of America. And at that point, when you've got such controversy and unpopularity and, frankly, a global disaster, massive stock market crashes, the oil price probably going above $120 if the Strait of Hormuz is kept closed. This is a disaster, and I think the representative of such a country, such a man as Donald Trump, has to be, keeping a low profile here.
Professor Patrick Bunn, thank you very much. Distinguished Professor of Sociology at the University of Johannesburg, brings us to 7:30.
Good morning, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, the TRC Cases Inquiry in Johannesburg has heard that the then National Director of Public Prosecutions, Fusi Pikoli, should have simply been directed by the law on whether or not to prosecute TRC cases. The Madlanga Commission has heard how suspended organised crime head Major General Richard Shibiri did not require a loan from alleged cartel member Vusimuzi Cat Matlala to fix his son's vehicle. Shibiri has testified that Matlala lent him 70,000 rand to fix his son's vehicle. The United Nations Security Council has passed a resolution condemning attacks by Iran on the Arab Gulf states and Jordan. A text put forward by the Gulf countries makes no mention of airstrikes by the US and Israel. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Our top traffic story, the recovery of the truck that overturned at Cliffdale on your way to Pietermaritzburg. The road is still closed at this hour. All lanes closed from Shongweni, moving up through Key Ridge and out towards the scene at Cliffdale. And that's having an enormous impact on traffic. As you can imagine, all that traffic on the N3 looking for alternative routes. So the N3 closes. Queues at Shongweni, big queues on the Cassia Road, very heavy on the M13 going west around Hillcrest. Big traffic on the Mike 1, the Richmond Road as you get up in towards Fields Hill for connections onto the alternative routes, the Shongweni Road, Stockville Road, if you like. Heavy traffic. Old Main through Hillcrest all the way up to Bortus Hills. Very heavy traffic. Motorists diverting in big numbers away from that N3 closure and jamming up anything that operates as a local alternative. Also, if you're coming out of Hillcrest on your way to Pinetown, there's a closure of the M13 now at Fields Hill. That's to recover a lost load collision from earlier this morning. So big traffic, Hillcrest into Kloof and then up that Wide-Bank Road around the back way. A lot of traffic disruption in that part of Durban this morning. Over in Joburg, not looking too bad, all fairly standard, but the Mike 1's probably heavy than you'd like. There's queues this morning from Boysons all the way through to Grayston Drive. There is that crash on the N12 at Edenvale, causing delays in from Jet Park Road. And Cape Town, no traffic lights on the Coburg Road and Bloberg Road at Tableview. If you're coming out of that side of Tableview, it's pretty heavily backed up. A lot of traffic spilling onto Marine Drive, causing delays from Bayside through to Racecourse Road at Milnerton. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
A little late. Morning, Zai. Orlando Pirates with a big win last night.
Oh, a big win indeed, John. The evidence is clear. That's proof that Pirates are definitely top of the table, and that was thanks to substitute Evidence Makopa sealing the victory with that stoppage time penalty, sending Pirates top of the table on goal difference level on 47 points with defending champions Mamelodi Sundowns, and this on the back of their 2-0 win over Richards Bay. It happened last night with 10 rounds remaining. The Premiership title race is heating up. And now we've got the Pirates coach, Abdusalam Wadu, saying that the ever-cheerful and colourful Centreline Pirates fans brought a banner that paid tribute to the fallen fellow Buccaneer Charles Fantisi, who passed away recently. Wadu says they dedicate the win to the late Fantisi.
You know, I have seen that in the media. And I seen that today. And when we lost somebody like that, it's all the time a sad moment. It's part of us. It's part of our team. And when we lost, when the fans lost somebody, it's like we lost somebody in our team. So all my condolences for his family, and may God protect him, and I think we can dedicate this victory for all his family.
On to cricket, Proteas women's all-rounder Nadine de Klerk has landed a major payday after being snapped up for about 3.7 million rand by London Spirit at the 100-player auction. The 26-year-old has been outstanding since the 50-over World Cup, where she scored 208 runs at an average of 52, including an unbeaten 84 against India. De Klerk will join fellow Proteas star Marizanne Kapp at London Spirit, while captain Laura Wolford has been retained by the Southern Brave for the 2026 season. Tennis at the Indian Wells Open. Several top seeds have booked their place in the quarterfinals. World number 1 Carlos Alcaraz continuing his strong run, and that's with a straight sets win over Casper Ruud, while Jessica Pegula defeated Belinda Bencic to reach the last 8. Meanwhile, Elena Rybakina advanced after Britain's Sonia Cartel was forced to retire with a back injury. And finally, cycling. Jonas Vingegaard has taken control of the Paris-Nice after winning stage 4 of the race. The two-time Tour de France champion attacked on the steep final to win the 195-kilometer stage. He now leads the overall standings by 52 seconds over Daniel Martinez, with George Steinhauser third in the general classifications. That's your sport. We'll pedal back top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Let's get the latest with Ntauling Lachela. Morning to you. SA Airlines hiking their fares. These fuel prices are going to hurt a lot.
That's right, John. Local airlines are starting to feel the pinch of higher jet fuel prices as the Middle East conflict keeps global oil elevated. FlySafair has introduced a temporary fuel subcharge on tickets booked from the 12th of March to the 12th of May, the first time the carrier has done so. Competitor Airlink, which has long included fuel costs and fares, has also raised prices and warned that further increases may follow if volatility continues. Now, fuel costs make up more than half of FlySafair's operating expenses, and prices at South Africa's coastal airports have surged sharply in recent weeks. Both airlines stress that the adjustments are not profit-driven but are needed to maintain operations amid extreme market swings. Across Africa, jet fuel costs are roughly 17% higher than the global average as older, less efficient fleets and supply challenges increase pressure. Now, airlines say fuel is secure through April, but uncertainty afterward could force fare hikes or flight schedule changes if prices remain elevated.
And I see the gold price is affecting Harmony. What's happening?
So generally, we've seen the mining earnings season playing out over the past few weeks, and those big miners have been posting really upbeat earnings, but that's not necessarily the case with Harmony Gold, as it had to deal with operational setbacks that dented its production. According to a Business Day article, a major factor was a force majeure declared by Sasol on its sodium cyanide contracts late last year, which affected the whole industry. Now, cyanide is essential for extracting gold, and the shortage hit Harmony's surface operations hard, reducing recoveries. Additional operational issues, including a mill motor failure and shipping delays at its Hidden Valley project in Papua New Guinea, also contributed to a 9% drop in gold output. Despite these setbacks, Harmony was comforted by rising gold prices, which supported a 13% rise in earnings and allowed the company to maintain full-year production, cost and grade guidance. Markets, however, were not convinced as Harmony plunged into the red, declining 11% in yesterday's trading session.
And are the dealers going to need all their red pens again today? What's happening out in the early markets?
That's the case, John. Kicking things off in Asia, stocks sinking deeper into the red as the war widens. According to reports, naval drones have been used to attack on oil tankers, suggesting a new threat in the Strait of Hormuz. Leading the losses on that front is the Japanese Nikkei, down 1.5%. That also filtering through to the US with futures in negative territory this morning. Markets are shrugging off the announcement by the International Energy Agency, saying it would release emergency oil reserves to ease supply pressures. As mentioned before, that's just not enough to calm nerves, and so oil continues to trend higher, up 7% this hour, trading just under $100 a barrel. Higher crude prices resulting in many investors looking for safety, and the preferred safe haven asset at the moment is the dollar, and that dollar strength weighing on the local unit, which is on the back foot this hour at 16.60. Looking at the rand against other currencies is at 22.20 to the pound and 19.15 to the euro. Lastly, the JSE closing in negative territory overnight. This as riskier assets were out of favor. The all share closed 1.85% lower.
I've got my black pen out. I'm living in hope and telling Michela, thank you very much. It's 19 minutes to 8.
Get Spar Super Savings at every store, in every aisle, every day. Like 600 gram Lancewood pre-packed cheese for $99.99. Save 30 Rand. Or 4 kg Spar IQF chicken mixed portions for $169.99. Save 30 Rand. Now that's super savings. Price is valid from 9 till 22 March. While stocks last. Only at Spar. T's and C's apply.
Hey! There's something new happening on SABC2. Fresh stories, bold moves. It's just a whole new vibe, man. And I am part of that vibe in Pinville. I am Charmaine Mdinda. Catch me on Monday to Friday at 9 o'clock. Live in every beat. The pulse of SA.
Join Proudly South African for the 14th annual Buy Local Summit and Expo. It's taking place on the 16th and 17th of March at the Sandton Convention Centre. Premier Buy Local event brings together business leaders, entrepreneurs and consumers to champion locally made products and services. Expect a vibrant exhibition, matchmaking between entrepreneurs and major corporates, insightful panel discussions and a business solutions hub. The theme is localization, a critical imperative to the economy. Come and explore how supporting local businesses creates jobs and economic resilience. Attendance is free. Register now at proudlysa.co.za or via the link in socials. Loved here, made here.
Don Gericka on SAFM.
Let's talk about housing for a little while. Land reform and access to housing is among South Africa's most pressing social justice issues. Legal experts say the country is failing its most vulnerable citizens. Let's talk to Louise du Plessis, a lawyer and lawyer for human rights, head of Land of Housing and Property Program there as well. Louise, thank you very much for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning. It's nice to be here.
How is this letting down, as I said, the most vulnerable citizens in the country?
Well, there's so many aspects. I can only address a few, I think, in the time that we have. In rural areas, I think, of course, land reform in the form of land in restitution claims, I don't think that process is really moving forward, and I question the political will to make it moving forward. And we see it especially with big land claims, where there's no progress, people don't have legal representation because that system was taken away from as an option for the land claimants. And then there's also the concern about distribution, the distribution policy of program from the department, where we know for a fact that a huge number of the people in the department sit for the last year, 2 years, without working at all because there's no instructions from above, and that matter, it seems, is not taken to the Labour Court. So the emerging farmers are not getting the necessary support that they used to get in the past. So that is on the rural front, very short now. And then in the urban area, with these big evictions and so on, we don't see any implementation of really good law, precedents and legislation that's used by the local governments to try to address the issue of informal settlements, of women's rights, property rights, women property rights, and so forth. So, and there's also the issue of homelessness is becoming a bigger and bigger issue. And again, there's a policy that the local governments are supposed to have to be in place to deal with homelessness, and how do you deal with that specific group of people, because they are a specific group of people. We're not talking about the informal settlements. So many times there is law and policies in place that's not used to implement it by the local governments, and other times it's just there's not a will to address these issues, and the poor people are just getting poorer.
We've got a little bit of time, Louise, so just explain, this is the big issue. Whenever we open lines here, the first thing that comes up is land and restitution. Why is there no political will? You think this would be priority number one?
I also think it must be, and I think a lot of work has been done, but the bigger claims is not moving forward. And also, currently in court, the one land claim, one of the biggest ones, there's an application from government actually to take back that land from the land claimants. I'm referring to the Mala Mala land claim. And with no real grounds, they are losing a case after a case on that issue as well. So why taking back land claim from black owners and not addressing some of the other issues? The political will, I can in all honesty say I don't know. I think this is as if they've lost the political will to really continue. And of course we cannot run away from the fact that corruption is playing a role here, and that the money is basically up. It's expensive, and it seems to me government doesn't easily want to go to the issue of expropriation. I'm not talking about the expropriation of no compensation, but if we start to look at a fair compensation, it will be definitely less than market value. Then it's something that we can do if there is a political will to do that.
Let's talk about how women face greater housing insecurity. Talk us through why this is a gender issue.
No, in many aspects, you cannot run away from the women issue. The fact is sometimes there's just straightforward discrimination against women, like the Mary Rahobi case showed, where the same system was just repeated when people in urban areas started to get ownership of title deed to their houses, and they just based it on the old system where there was a discrimination against black women and where they could not be regarded as owners. I'm saying this now again very loosely in legal terms, but so it's actually just giving the houses to whoever was on the filing system, and that was normally used to be a man. Black women weren't allowed to have that. But Mary Rahobi did address that issue in the Constitutional Court, and the legislation did change. But there are a huge number of other issues. If you look at inheritance, nearly 20 years ago, there was a case in the Constitutional Court where black women could go and also now inherit property. And although that case was very successful in its use, there was also, for example, there was a section in the judgment that said any black woman for a time since 1993 could go back and try to get property that they lost out on because of this discriminatory laws. And I tell you now, not one woman did that because they weren't aware of this judgment. And that's a shame. And the same will happen with Mary Rahobi, where women can now apply to court to say, listen, I did not get my house because of this discriminatory practices. And unless it's followed, this wonderful judgments are followed up by very, very strong campaigns, those women will lose out again, and they will end. Many of them ended up on the street and so on. That's what we saw, through our clinics and so forth. So that campaigns are not happening, and I think that's especially the duty of government, not only, but NGOs must also step in here. But it's impossible for many of the NGOs like ourselves to have the necessary resources to get that message out there.
We've spoken about individual cases, but holistically, we still have apartheid spatial inequality. This is such a big picture of being able to not only give people land and houses, but also in the right places.
I know that is a massive problem. I mean, that is like one of the biggest problems. And again, we have, we've got the planning law, we've got SPLUMA. That is really a good piece of legislation to address the issue of spatial justice, because it's not only apartheid legacy. It's also a question of we do have a lot of migrants coming into bigger cities to look for better opportunities. We can't, and we do deal with poverty. It's issues that can be addressed through planning law. It can make people's lives much easier, but the implementation tool of SPLUMA, the planning law that's so well, is the social development frameworks from the local governments, and that is where the problem comes in. That tool, read with the independent, the IDPs, where the budget lies, that is not implemented. And I think some of the NGOs ourselves is also at fault here, because we were supposed to address, we've got the law, we're not using that law, but we're going to start to use it now to say if there's big evictions of informal settlements, that you'd consider to first leave the people where they are and have an in situ upgrading. Because I believe if people do have tenure security, and we're far away from RDP houses, we're actually not interested in RDP houses anymore. We want tenure security. If people know there's not a possible eviction hanging over their heads, they will start to build their structures and don't put up this tiny houses. But and the law is there, again, there's no proper implementation from local government's side.
Louise du Plessis, thank you very much. Lawyer for Human Rights, Head of Land, Housing and Property Program.
Thank you. Pleasure.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. There are two major closures of very busy routes around the Greater Durban area. So we're talking just inland a little bit. First of all, we all know about the closure of the N3 going up towards Cliffdale. The road remains closed at Shongweni, effectively. So there's a massive impact on traffic flow as it all comes off the N3 and has to hit the alternative route. So you can't get beyond Shongweni. You'll be taken off, forced off there and sent along a very heavily congested Cassia Road. Cassia Road going in and out of Hillcrest from the Old Main down towards the M13. Very heavy backlogs. A lot of traffic, obviously, on the M13 heading heading from Kloof down towards Hillcrest on the alternative, and then the old main road heavily backed up through Hillcrest all the way to Bourtis Hill, up through Drummond, and of course you've got the roadworks at the top end there at Cato Ridge to deal with as well. Also the M13, really big sort of stuck traffic going out to Key Ridge into the closure. So Hillcrest, any route that offers an alternative, the M3, you can absolutely bank on it being jammed and jammed properly. Now going the other way, there's a major problem with the closure of Fields Hill due to a crash and lost load from earlier this morning. So Hillcrest, Old Main, coming out of Hillcrest, heavy down to the M13, M13 heavy all the way to Kloof, and then a trip around the Whitebank Road up the top of Kloof. So if you're Durban bound or Pinetown bound, major delays in that upper highway area as well. Also some queues on the N3, just moving very slow towards Pavilion once you get through Paradise Valley this morning. Joburg, early a crash on the N12 inbound around Edenvale. That's pushed a queue back to Boksburg. That looks heavy. The N3 last couple of days been heavy at Sprayview. It is again this morning, big queues out of Sprayview up towards the Heidelberg Road. And Cape Town, very heavy around the bottom of Tableview. No traffic lights this morning. Bloberg Road and Kuberg Road. Pointsmen have been there, but it's just an impossibly major junction. So coming along the Bloberg Road from Wood Drive, trying to join from Gee Road and local routes, it's all heavy. Traffic on the Kuberg Road around the Finery, quite bad as well. No traffic lights, Baden Powell at the N2, so that's all congested both ways, and that's holding up the N2 outbound, trying to off-ramp into that congestion on Baden Powell Bridge. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This February, fall in love with the journey. No phones, no flights, just determination, connection, and the open road. From breathtaking landscapes to unexpected challenges, Race Across the World is back. Bigger, bolder, and more emotional than ever. Because sometimes the best way to find yourself is to travel together. Race Across the World Season 4, Thursdays at 6 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
Exciting news, South Africa. SABC TV licenses as partners with Capitec to make paying your TV license simple, affordable and accessible. If you're a Capitec client, sign into the app and click on Transact. Next, select Pay Bills, then click Pay At, and enter your reference number to complete your payment. It's that easy. You'll receive an instant SMS confirmation. Now you can keep your stories alive and your screens shining bright. TV licenses, pay yours, make a difference.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Romeo in the Free State, what do you want to talk about?
Good morning, Johnny, and how are you this morning?
Thank you. Thanks for asking.
I'm all right, my brother. Thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to talk about the Security Council of United Nations for voting against the retaliation of Iran that has injured so many civilians. But my question is, does only Security Council see the harmful caused by Iran without seeing what Israel and America is doing against Iran? If it is the situation, and then the world is not balancing, considering the fact that when Russia invaded Ukraine, we saw Europe and the other Latin American countries allies together with the European Union with the FIFA to ban Russia not to participate. If those who are participating, they are not going to use their flags. So why are we not ban the hosting of World Cup in America for what they are doing currently? If FIFA is doing the correct thing, equally the same as what we think United Nations should do. If it is only for those who are not favored, then the world is not a world that we are expecting, all of us.
All right, Romeo in the Free State with his views. What do you make of that? 086 000 2032. Let's take some voice notes.
Good morning to Rasiswa and SAFM listeners. Anonymous here. Please talk to the person who always shuts the electricity off in Port Shepstone every day. Why? Because they say there's no load shedding. But here in Port Shepstone, the load shedding is very big. It takes 12 hours. It takes 4 hours. It takes at any time. We don't know what's happening. Please help us to Lasiswa. Thank you.
Good morning, Brajon. Brajon, wouldn't it be a good idea to bring in the experts who knows about the fuel supplies to look into the continent and say, if Nigeria has got fuel, why are we not buying into it? Why are we waiting for us to run into problems and then we have got trucks, queuing into these fuel stations because the supply is running dry? Why don't we look into the continent? Wouldn't it be cheaper?
Good morning, John. I hope you are well. This is Khalid from Edenvale. In relation to your upcoming discussion about the US Ambassador, Bozal, I would like to make it aware to South Africans that we are also complicit to the wars that are unfolding in the Middle East because of our exporting of coal to the genocidal war machine, Israel, which was the state that initially launched those strikes on Iran. So all of the consequences of the Gulf War is actually a result of Israel trying to destabilize Islamic nations. I hope this factors into the discussion, and I hope South Africa can put a stop to fueling the war machine. Through entities like Glencore, African Rainbow Minerals, and Richards Bay Minerals, we are sending coal to Israel. Cool.
Hi, morning to SAFM listeners. Yeah, the insourcing of state labor, I think I concur with it, because especially in construction, people get tenders and then go and employ cheap labor of foreigners. Our people end up not having a job. So it's better when we insource, because we know only the citizens through state they will be insourced.
Good morning, John. I listened to the conversation between you and Ruben Maleka from PSA. Basically, PSA, they know very well that the services that are offered by the private companies are far better than what has been offered by the public servants. But what they are doing now, they are pushing for this bill, not for the benefit of the poor people, but for the benefit of their membership, because they know that their membership will increase. Lala Poshoko, Polokwane.
Just to let you know, we're going to have a little bit more time today. A couple of things have been moved around, so we're going to have a little bit more time after, just before the news at 9 o'clock, to be able to take calls and voice notes and those kind of things as well. So if you have something to say, you have something to talk about, 086 000 2032. Let's take one more. I think we've got time for one more voice note before the news at 8 o'clock.
Morning, John. South Africa, a country at war with itself. Soldiers have to be deployed against the society for people to behave like human beings. What a pity. Other countries are busy arming themselves against foreign enemies. We are busy arming ourselves against ourselves. Again, Trump there, he says Iran can participate in the World Cup. What about if some of the players are army members or they are related to Al-Manei? What is he going to do? Anonymous.
Taking more calls. We'll take more voice notes later on in the show. I'm John Gericke in for Tulas. It's 8 o'clock.
Outsurance Essential is made for older cars. Claims are paid in cash within 5 working days, and you choose your own panel beater. SMS CAR to 43185. That's CAR to 43185.
In our top stories, Bulelani Ngcuka testifies before TRC cases inquiry, and water supply in Polokwane under severe pressure. Good morning. Former National Director of Public Prosecutions, Bulelani Ngcuka, has told the TRC cases inquiry in Johannesburg that the then National Director of Public Prosecutions, Vusi Pikoli, should have simply been directed by the law on whether or not to prosecute TRC cases. He was asked to reflect on a secret memorandum from Pikoli to the then Justice Minister Bridget Mabandla where the former complained of political interference by a forum of directors general. The memorandum wanted him to wait for its recommendations before proceeding with prosecutions. Moka says he's hesitant to judge those who succeeded him at the NPA.
You don't know the circumstances under which they were operating. One is not in possession of all the full facts. And I don't want to be seen to be critical of my successors. But let me say this. I cannot find any reason why the national director can say he does not know what to do. The law is clear. You take the decision. You prosecute. You don't ask for the advice from other people. That would have been my view. So I don't know what caused my colleague to take that decision. But at the end of the day, he should have been the one to say no.
The Madlanga Commission has heard how suspended organised crime head Major General Richard Shibiri did not require a loan from alleged criminal cartel member Vusimuzi Matlala to fix his son's vehicle. Evidence leader Tabang Pue told Shibiri that he had money in his account to pay for his son's vehicle repairs. He had testified that Matlala lent him 70,000 rand to fix his son's vehicle. When probed by Pue about why he did not use the money that he had, Shibiri told the commission he wanted to build a wall for his home.
I decide how I want to use my money. It's not about what you have there. I decided to say I wanted to make the wall, and then I can get another money to do that, and then I will pay it back, because I know in December I will be getting more than 100,000 for my bonus. So that is what I thought like that time.
ANC First Deputy Secretary General Mvula Mokonyane has called on South Africans to unite and embrace each other in honour of the late co-founder of the Congress of the People, Musiwa Likota. She was speaking at Likota's memorial service at Regina Mundi Catholic Church in Soweto yesterday. The service was attended by some of his luminaries from his former political homes, the Black Consciousness Movement and the United Democratic Front. Mokonyane says he will be remembered as the greatest organizer of their lifetime.
As we all will be going to Bloemfontein to lay his mortal remains to rest, may the death of Comrade Terra unite us, and may it make all of us to embrace what we normally say in the Lord's Prayer. Uri itshwarele melato ya rona, jaaka re itshwarela ba ba re loufisitseng. And that's why we are proud and grateful that Comrade President Cyril Ramaphosa has offered a special official funeral for a comrade and a veteran of our struggle, Comrade Terra Likota, because ka Sesotho ba re e khojwa e le maoto a mane.
Limpopo Premier Popi Ramatuba says the growing demand for water in the Polokwane municipality areas has put severe pressure on water supply. She was speaking at a media briefing on water provision in Polokwane. She says the water supplied to the municipality is less than the demand.
The entire municipality requires staggering 174 million litres per day. Yet our current sources, which are not even coming from the city, they can only yield 118.15 million litres, leaving us with significant shortfall. In the urban area, where the demand is 99.7 million litres per day, we are failing to meet those needs with available supplies falling short by nearly 13 million litres per day.
And finally, the United Nations Security Council has passed a resolution condemning attacks by Iran on the Arab Gulf states and Jordan. A text put forward by the Gulf countries makes no mention of airstrikes by the US and Israel. China and Russia abstained. The Iranian ambassador to the UN, Amir Sahid Erevani, gave this reaction.
This resolution is a manifest injustice against my country, the main victim of a clear act of aggression. It distorts the realities on the ground and deliberately ignores the root causes of the current crisis. It rewards the regimes of the United States and Israel, which have violated the UN Charter and committed act of aggression.
Recapping the top story, former National Director of Public Prosecutions, Bulelani Ngcuka, has told the TRC Cases Inquiry in Johannesburg that the then National Director of Public Prosecutions, Fusi Pikoli, should have simply been directed by the law on whether or not to prosecute TRC cases. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Theft, accident, and 1 million rand third-party cover for your older car. Outsurance Essential has it all. Get a quote. SMS CAR to 43185. That's CAR to 43185.
Proud of your networking skills? Proud that your car is paid off? Well, with Outsurance Essential Car Insurance, you could be saving too. 63-year-old Modise pays only 344 Rand a month for his 2012 Chevrolet Cruze, and his claims are paid in cash within only 5 working days. Get Outsurance Essential Car Insurance today for unfinanced cars older than 5 years and valued at less than 130,000 Rand. SMS CAR to 43185. That's CAR to 43185. Outsurance, a licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's and information online.
And it's a very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, rugby, the Stormers warning that they must be much better to beat the Bulls in the URC North-South derby this weekend. And we also bring you news from cricket, where it's a youthful Proteas that head to New Zealand for a 5-match T20 series against the Black Caps. We'll have all the details around 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. If you're between Pietermaritzburg and Durban, it doesn't really matter anymore which way you're going. There are 2 major closures and traffic is absolutely jam-packed. So the big one, the truck crash closing the N3 between Shongweni and Cliffdale. No change there. The N3 still closed from Shongweni. Major disruption. N3 into the Shongweni closure. The M13 down to Cassia up to Old Main up through Borters Hill, and Drummond on your way to Cato Ridge. So major congestion in that greater sort of Hillcrest area. And then at the same time, the M13 towards Durban is closed at Fields Hill due to that truck crash and lost load earlier this morning. So coming out of Hillcrest, Old Main Road, onto the M13, down to Kloof, and then a divert around the back of that Wybank Road, trying to work down a pint out. It is super heavy that side as well. So that whole sort of upper highway area, there's no route open that's flowing. Anything that acts as an alternative is absolutely jam-packed. So major problems there. Make sure you've got plenty of time to get through or travel later. Today might be a good call. Into Joburg we go with a crash on the N12 by Edenvale. That's still pushing a big queue from Boksburg as you run in towards that particular scene. The Mike 1 from Boyson through to Sandton's fairly heavy. Buccleuch to Melrose on the Mike 1 South also jammed up as well. Cape Town heavy out of Tableview. No traffic lights on the Kuberg Road, Bloberg Road junction. That's a bit of a mission getting out towards the refinery side. And lighted out on Baden-Powell Drive at the N2 highway. So backlogging there. And that's also impacting the N2 outbound off-ramp onto that Baden-Powell bridge. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
The Morning Brief, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
Into the final hour of the show we go. John Kerrick in for Tulas today and tomorrow. Good morning to you. It's 10 minutes past 8. We're going to have a little bit of time today to be able to take calls and voice notes. So get calling 086 000 2032. You can send a voice note as well. In a moment, we're going to talk about glaucoma. I'm going to talk to a doctor, find out exactly how to say that. Glaucoma. It's called the silent thief of sight. We're going to find out why it happens, what it is, and there's a whole host of conversations we're going to have about this. We're going to talk to Dr. Nombuso Mate in a moment, the Vice President of the South African Glaucoma Society. We'll get the doctor to help me pronounce that as well. That's up in a moment.
Yo, it's Sashili Kelly. Join us for stories that will make you live in every beat. The Pulse of SA. Starting 23 February 2026, Monday to Friday at 7 p.m. on SABC2.
Oh, I'm so tired.
There's nothing on the TV.
Fanas, girls, let's take a break. We are going to A1 Lake.
Take a break with us. Get your one-day cup domestic cricket 50-over game ticket at www.cricket.co.za. Wazana with it's family time.
Without insurance, saving on your car insurance feels like arriving at the school reunion in your dream car. 32-year-old Parushka saves a whopping 729 Rand on her 2020 Aval H2. Get a quote now, and if OutSurance can't save you money, ask for 500 Rand or 1,500 Rand if you've been claim-free with the same insurer for 3 years. Get savings or cash. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. OutSurance, a licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's and information online.
The only talk radio morning breakfast show that makes sense. The Morning Brief.
It's being called the silent thief of sight, one of the leading causes of preventable blindness worldwide. It's called, I'm hoping to say, glaucoma. Glaucoma? I know. Let's talk to an expert on this. Dr. Nombuso Mate is a vice president of the South African Glaucoma Society. Is that how you say it, Doc? Glaucoma.
It is glaucoma. Good morning, John, and good morning to your listeners. Yes, glaucoma.
I know how to pronounce it now. What is it?
So it is a group of diseases that affect the optic nerve. The optic nerve is really the structure that enables us to see. So when I explain to patients, I explain it as a cable. It's like an electric cable that connects the eye and the brain. And you need to be able to have an intact and working cable that can move the sense of vision from your eye to your brain, and any disturbance to that nerve creates a problem with vision. But specifically glaucoma we see with patients that might also have a problem where the pressure in the eye is up, and that causes a damage of the optic nerve. And unfortunately, the damage is irreversible. So when we talk about the silent thief of vision, it's really because many patients would have glaucoma and not even know that they have glaucoma. So it's not an illness that announces itself very, very well. So you wouldn't know. Some people do not have symptoms until it's really late. And by the time most people have their vision impacted, there's already a significant amount of damage to their nerve and loss of vision, which is irreversible.
It's one of those things where it happens slowly and we sort of get used to it. The brain counteracts it and we don't realize that it's happening.
Correct. And also it may be a little asymmetrical. So it may start in one eye and be a little bit slow in the other. The brain doesn't like to be confused. So the brain will take information from the two eyes and merge that information and create one eye that's got some areas that are already missing some vision. You wouldn't even know because the brain just fills in the gaps from the other eye. So that's part of the problem as well, that only when you isolate one eye, you might actually be able to pick up, hang on, this eye is I'm not seeing very well with this eye. Obviously, the more advanced it gets, the more prominent the visual symptoms that patients would complain or experience.
I've got a stat in front of me here that half of the patients are already blind in one eye when they visit an ophthalmologist.
Correct. And this is what we see very much so in our environment, in our context. It's young patients. Patients are in their 40s or under 40, and often one eye is already blind by the time they're presenting. So if one eye is already blind, it's not to say that the other eye is fine. The other eye has already got some impact in terms of the nerve damage.
What's the cause?
So it's a group of diseases. So for most people or many people, there's a hereditary impact. So it's a highly heritable disease, meaning if you have a first degree relative, a parent, a sibling that's been diagnosed with glaucoma, your risk is high. It's associated with high pressure in the eye. So we try and separate that a little bit just to provide a bit of a clarity. There are some patients that might not have a very high pressure in the eyes and still have glaucoma, but majority of patients will have a high pressure. And then there are some conditions such as injuries. If you've had an old injury in the eye, you can develop glaucoma at a later stage. And there's certain medications, a group of medications called corticosteroids or prednisone that might also increase the risk of a patient getting glaucoma. But essentially, the majority of people that suffer from glaucoma are because it's age. let me put it that way. It's an age-related disease. So much of the patients will be older age, above 60. The older you get, the higher the prevalence. So patients who are in their 80s, there's a chance of 1 in 8 people having glaucoma, as opposed to your 40 or younger, who might be 1 in 200 that would develop glaucoma.
This diabetes, hypertension, all these things that we're getting from our diets and our lifestyle at the moment, does that help?
Yes, that it does increase the risks. So we talk about risk factors, are all the possibilities, all the things that we can put together that might push up the chances of you getting glaucoma. And certainly comorbidities such as diabetes, hypertension, those definitely can increase the risk of developing glaucoma, as would people that are short-sighted. So if you're somebody, you've grown up with knowing that you're short-sighted, and you've been wearing glasses since you were a child, there's an increased risk as well in terms of developing glaucoma.
Oh, I better get checked out. All right. I find it interesting that people of African descent are at higher risk. That's interesting.
Yes. And for reasons we're not very clear on largely, but yes, we see a much higher prevalence. It's almost twice the prevalence. The global prevalence is around 3.5% to 4%, but some countries in Africa have quoted up to 8 to 10% in terms of the prevalence. So yes, there's a definite African ancestry, definitely higher risk of developing glaucoma. And also the glaucoma tends to happen at an earlier age, and the disease is much more aggressive. So we're really dealt with those two things, which is really makes it very challenging to manage patients with glaucoma. I must also say that glaucoma does affect other age groups. So we do see glaucoma in children. Often children will be born with glaucoma. It's another type of entity, and we'll have patients that children that will develop glaucoma between the ages of, say, 5 and 18 that may develop glaucoma. But it's much more rare in those settings.
There's a list of screening frequencies, and as you get older, it should be more often, you say. But people who have glasses get, they get their eyes checked every 2 years or something that the opticians like to do. Is that enough? Do the opticians, are they able to detect these kind of things?
So many of our optometry colleagues have the capacity to at least suspect when someone has got glaucoma, where they might have facilities to be able to check the pressure in the eye, and some might be able to do a photograph of the nerve of the eye, and that would make them suspect whether there's something and then refer. So that's part of the problem, that screening is not really built into public health initiatives or even primary health care initiatives around screening. So many patients are missed. And so in terms of intervals, I would say if you're somebody that, the risk factors are mounting for you. So you're someone who is already maybe in their 50s, you've got a parent who's got glaucoma, you maybe are short-sighted, maybe you've been using a steroid cream for your face, or you've got asthma, you're using a pump, your risk factors are more, so your screening interval might be a little bit different. You might opt for maybe once a year screening versus somebody who's got no family history, no other risk factors, who might screen every 2 to 3 years, for example. Certainly, as you get older, we would say the interval of screening needs to be shortened. So over 60, would say 1 to 2 years at the least.
Yeah, I refer to them as old man's tests. When you go to the doctor and you get all the blood pressure and you do all those lovely things with the doctor, the eye should be part of that.
So it is quite difficult to make it part of that, because what you need in terms of equipment to be able to assess that is not what would be standard equipment. And I think it is something really that as a continent, as a country, we should be trying to look towards. How do we provide access to the average person to be able to have a pressure test? So some hospitals, say for example in the UK, have implemented strategies where they're running screenings within sort of malls, that sort of setting where a person you're likely to come into a mall for, your whatever you're purchasing or whatever, and there's a clinic there that you'd be able to get screening. So I'm of the opinion that we really should be gearing our screening to those places where people are likely to traverse. But also I think clinics where large numbers of patients with high blood pressure, diabetes that's where we could be incorporating a little bit more of that. And it's, screening at the moment primarily rests with the ophthalmologist and the optometrist sometimes. And really it's, we need to be building initiatives around how do we move it from those people who are very few, to nursing and other allied services that can assist in terms of just case detection and then referring for confirmation of diagnosis.
Doc, I've got a minute. You said it was permanent, can't be reversed. Is there anything one can do once you have been discovered to have glaucoma?
So there's many things. We've got many treatment strategies that are available to patients. What is irreversible is the sight loss. So once the nerve damage has happened and there is a loss in vision as a consequence, that is irreversible. But if we're able to establish that there is disease, we can halt that progression. So a person doesn't really need to lose vision that affects their functioning. And there's various treatment strategies. It would include medications that we use in the form of drops. We also have laser technology that is proving very helpful in terms of the managing of glaucoma. And then, of course, where we have situations where a patient is a bit more aggressive, we're worried about your risk factors, you're very young, your disease is advanced, we might approach it from a surgical perspective. And even from the surgeries, there's many different types of options that we have available.
All right, go get screened. Dr. Nombuso Mate, thank you very much. Vice President of the South African Glaucoma Society.
This February, love the truth, no matter how unsettling it is. They were called accidents, a slip, a fall, a tragic mistake. But what if they weren't? Fatal fall, murder or accident investigates suspicious deaths. From balconies, staircases and cliffs. Where one question refuses to go away. Did someone push them? Through forensic science and haunting testimony, the truth is uncovered. Fatal fall, murder or accident. Tuesdays 6 p.m. only on S3. Open up. S3.
Bafana Bafana are preparing for the 2026 FIFA World Cup, which will be hosted by the United States of America, Canada, and Mexico from 11 June to 19 July 2026. Bafana Bafana will host 2 international friendlies against Panama on Friday 27 March in Durban at the Moses Mabhida Stadium at 7 p.m. and Tuesday 31 March in Cape Town at the DHL Stadium at 7:30 p.m. Tickets are available at Ticket Pro at 80 Rand for adults and 50 Rand for children under 12. For more details, visit safa.net and Bafana Bafana on X.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
A little bit of time before we go to sport, and then we've got plenty of time after 8:30. We've got finance in a moment. Let's go to Daneo in the Northern Cape first of all. Daneo, what do you want to talk about this morning?
Good morning. Good morning, John. I do have a question. Why hasn't SABC asked DIRCO or the delegation that visited the White House during the delegation that visited the White House, remember, I think it was around February or February. Yeah, February. Why hasn't SABC journalists asked the DIRCO or that delegation if indeed USA during the meetings have laid down the demands that the SA must meet in order for the relationship to improve? I'm asking this because we have only heard about these demands from the other side, but not from the SA side. That's what I'm asking.
So, I'm confused. So you want us to find out if the US has laid down those 5 requirements?
Yeah, like we haven't had those. We haven't had it like from the SA side.
Right.
If indeed those requirements were laid down on the table during the meeting.
But are we not hearing, if we're hearing from the United States of those 5 requirements, is that not enough for you?
I also want to hear that from the SA mouth. From
Right.
the SA DIRCO.
In other words, like what is DIRCO's views on those 5 requirements, and how have you been asked them?
No, have those requirements been asked I want to hear if, like, indeed those requirements have been asked, because DIRCO has been silent on this.
Well, that's America's problem, is that because the silence, and the ambassador was saying that the silence is actually speaking louder than any actions.
No, like DIRCO haven't told us, the South Africans, that yes, South Africans, the USA have asked us this demand. They haven't told us as the citizens. So that's I'm asking, like, why haven't SABC, asked the DIRCO
Ask
for us?
DIRCO, right.
Yeah.
Okay, no, valid point. All right, we'll get on to it. We'll see if we can find somebody. Danea, thank you very much. Salim is in Durban. What do you want to talk about, Salim?
Good morning, John. I want to talk about the UN and the resolutions of the UN. I really want to question what is the real worth of the UN. The UN seems to be very biased, one-sided. They favor only certain nations. There's genocide been committed against defenseless Palestinian people. There's no UN resolution against it. Now you get Iran that's been attacked. You know what I mean? And now, you can't even get a resolution against people that are violating international law, that are breaking international law. But as soon as, it favors some nations like the United States and Israel, it's very easy to get those resolutions. So the UN is actually a useless body, and there's really, in my view, no need to have the UN anymore, because you cannot have a world body that favors certain nations and only works for the interests of certain nations and does not really bring, the interests of peace at heart. Because since the creation of the UN, there has been no peace, because the UN is a body that is really, a body that only favors certain nations. So, United States, get resolution to pass war. They killed African leader, head of state, Gaddafi, and the UN has passed the resolution. They committed, international crime, and they, sanctioned war against, a country like Iraq from the UN. So what's the purpose of the US if there's no peace in the world? What is the purpose of the UN?
Do you know, Salim, do you know that the Secretary General did condemn the US and Israeli strikes on Iranian military targets?
But you see, that doesn't help when you have a veto power nation just obstructing and blocking any resolution that goes against them. If you have the veto power should be completely scrapped.
Right.
And they don't need to have 5 nations that's in the Security Council. It doesn't serve the needs of the world.
All right. Salim, not agreeing with the UN. What do you make of that? 086 000 2032. Let's take some voice notes.
Morning, John. John, South Africa, a country at war with itself. Soldiers have to be deployed against the society for people to behave like human beings. What a pity. Other countries are busy arming themselves against foreign enemies. We are busy arming ourselves against ourselves. Again, Trump there, he says Iran can participate in the World Cup. What about if some of the players are army members or they are related to Al-Manei? What is he going to do? Anonymous.
We're going to push Zai. We're going to push Zai a little bit later on, I think. So let's squeeze in a couple of voice notes in there. We played that voice note already. Apologies for that. And I've only really got a minute till my headlines at 8:30. Sorry, I'm running out of time here. Focusing. See, late night, I've got more time to have conversations. So Zai, we're going to push you just after business and news headlines. That's coming up in a minute. Let's squeeze in a voice note between now and then.
Good morning, John and SFM listeners. Buta here from Pretoria. It's good that thoroughly deploying the army. Jallarado parking them, but I find it very discriminative that Cyril only deploy the army to colored areas. Does Cyril know Browns Farm, Philippi, Orange Farm, Cooks, Kailicha, Nyanga? So can Cyril just deploy the army to all areas and not target colors alone? Because crime is more in Black Township than it is in colored townships. So can Cyril please deploy the army to Black Townships too? Sharp.
We'll take more calls and voice notes later on. You with SFM. John Cherokee in for Tulas. It's 8:30.
Good morning, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, police in Mpumalanga are investigating a case of domestic violence that resulted in 3 deaths. A man allegedly shot and killed his 43-year-old wife and their 3-year-old son during a dispute between the couple. He also allegedly shot and injured his sister-in-law and his wife's uncle. Former National Director of Public Prosecutions, Bulelani Ngcuka, has told the TRC Cases Inquiry in Johannesburg that the then National Director of Public Prosecutions, Vusi Pikoli, should have simply been directed by the law on whether or not to prosecute TRC cases. And AfriForum has rubbished reports that a number of South Africans who arrived in the United States as refugees since May last year are reportedly heading back home. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning, Durban side. If you're around the Upper Highway area, that area commonly or also referred to as Hillcrest, Kloof and Maytime, Wynbank, all that sort of area, it is a major morning of disruption. 2 closures. The N3 going out to Pietermaritzburg closed between Shongeni and Cliffdale due to recovery of a Hazchem truck that overturned earlier this morning. At the very same time, the M13 Fields Hill closed because of a truck crash and lost load earlier. So Hillcrest right in the middle of that, taking the brunt of the N3 traffic diverting up around sort of the old main road, Hillcrest Central Jam, Bortis Hill up to Drummond through to Cato Ridge. It's all very heavy. Cassia Road, M13 arriving from sort of Old Main down to Cassia Road. It's all just absolutely solid. That's going sort of through Hillcrest area towards Pietermaritzburg. Then if you're coming the other way, you'll join the M13 from Old Main and then you'll sit from Gillets all the way down to the Topper Fields here where it's closed. And then you do that divert around Wynbank, and the routes inside Kloof trying to get out towards the M13 at Fields Hill are heavily backed as well. If you don't have to drive up a hill, up a highway area, like if it's not essential, or if you can ring ahead and say, no, I'll do it later, that'd be the smart call. If you've got to get through that area and it's urgent, just give yourself plenty of time to get through 2 major highway closures, and the traffic has gone next level in a really significant way. So just be aware of that. Joburg, pretty heavy around Ekurhuleni side this morning. So the R24 leaving the airport, a crash at Edenvale. That's heavy. Traffic back to Barber Road. Truck overturning on the N12 at Edenvale. That's heavy coming in from Boksburg. And the roadworks around Pencil Park, M3, M2 around Heldnay Interchange, causing big delays again out of Alberton and Germiston on that run through to Van Buren. The N3 at Spruitview is still very heavily backed up as well today. And the N1 South extending a queue at this hour from Samram all the way down to about New Road before you're out of that. Cape Town, no traffic lights on the R44 at Annandale Road. If you're on your way out of Somerset West towards Stellenbosch, that's quite a big queue. Got caught there last night, getting caught again this morning. And the N1 into town, pretty heavy from Plattekloof all the way through to Elevated Freeway. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Morning, Zai. It's the North versus South Rugby Derby. I see the Stormers have a slight edge over the Bulls, but they say they need to be better.
They need to be better, but you know those North-South derbies, John, they never lie. Form goes out the window, and it's more of the pride, that walks onto the field first. And we're building up to this with the Stormers prop, Nettling Forshire, saying his side must improve significantly if they are to end their 3-match losing streak in the United Rugby Championship North-South derby against the Bulls at Loftus. The Cape side have slipped from top spot to 5th on the log after recent defeats to the Sharks and Lions, while the Bulls head into the clash on a 4-match winning run. Cricket now, a youthful Protea side heads to New Zealand for a 5-match T20 international series starting on Sunday, with Keshav Maharaj set to captain the squad. With several senior players rested ahead of the IPL, the tour offers a big opportunity for rising talents such as Connor Esterhuizen, Andile Simelane and Nqubani Mokoena to make their mark against the current champions. We've also got some news from soccer. The German Bundesliga side RB Leipzig saying they're excited to expand their footprint in Africa as they prepare for their first ever post-season tour to South Africa. The club will face Mamelodi Sundowns in a friendly at Lucas Moripa Stadium on the 29th of May. Leipzig's chief business officer Johan Plenger says the visit is not only about football, but also recognizing the rich history of the game in South Africa.
For history and for what Lucas has achieved as a player with an international career and bringing South African football on a global scale to a lot of different countries. And for us, it's important not just to have a marketing tour, but really to have credible and trustworthy touch points, and appreciating one of the football legends is something that is an important signal for us also to send it to the football community.
And finally, Cape Town's annual World Naked Bike Ride has been cancelled after organisers ran into issues with the city of Cape Town. The event, which normally takes place ahead of the Cape Town Cycle Tour, was called off after the city reported imposed new conditions requiring the participants to be fully clothed. That's your sport. We'll have more coverage with John Gericke around 12:30. I'm Zai Khan.
Are you putting that in as a sport report?
Well, it is a sporting event. Just with John, we just because we're being exposed doesn't mean we cannot tell the story.
I've been in Cape Town for that ride. I haven't done it personally, but I've been in Cape Town for that ride. It is, shall we say, eye-opening.
Yes. And with no kits at all. But you'll be fully kitted, I'm sure, at 12:30. Looking forward to
I'll do my best if there's no commissions and things. Thank you very much. We'll talk again tomorrow.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Last time this morning, Tarling Luchela, what's been happening on the markets in a moment. But first of all, OUTsurance got some strong earnings.
Yeah, and shareholders will be smiling all the way to the bank, John. That's as the group hiked its interim dividend by 36% to 120 cents per share, plus a special dividend of 30.3 cents per share following the monetization of non-core assets. Now, the strong payout was supported by solid earnings, with normalized group profit up 7.7% to just over 2.3 billion rands. Subsidiary OUTsurance Holdings saw gross written premiums in its property and casualty business rise 17.4%, driven by growth in SA, Australia, and Ireland, while premium inflation continued to normalize. Now, claims were higher due to natural disasters, particularly in Australia, but OUTsurance Life delivered strong new business growth and improved cost efficiency, supporting overall performance. The group remains confident in its resilient, geographically diverse growth strategy. Company CEO Martinez Visser noting that geopolitical uncertainty, including the ongoing war, will continue to be monitored, but says the company's diversified operations position it well for the year ahead.
And there's also good news with chickens.
Yes, and I know chickens don't fly, but Rainbow's profits are soaring high, hey? During the interim period, the poultry player more than doubled its earnings, benefiting from stronger demand for chicken, lower input costs, and ongoing operational improvements. A strengthening rand and smarter pricing also helped lift revenue 11.3% to 8.8 billion rands, showing that cost pressures are easing while growth accelerates. The company says the results reflect the success of its growth strategy and strong consumer demand, providing a solid platform for continued expansion in the second half of the year. Now, the upbeat performance allowed Rainbow to reward shareholders with its first ever interim dividend, so investors there will also be laughing all the way to the bank.
And on the markets today, what's happening?
Now, looking at international stocks, we are likely in for a downbeat open. And just reflecting on how the JSE has been performing, we really had a strong start to the year with the bourse up about 11%, but that's been wiped out with those gains only up 1.3% year to date. Just further showing the kind of impact the higher oil price and jitters in the Middle East have had on the JSE. Now, looking at the rand, retracing some losses this hour, it's sitting at 16.55 to the dollar, 22.14 to the pound, and 19.12 to the euro. Oil still in the green this hour, trading just below $100 a barrel. Now, that elevated crude price continues to weigh on markets as traders continue to assess the kind of impact that will have on fuel prices and inflation moving forward. And so US futures and Asian stocks are in negative territory.
All right, Ntaling Lachela, thank you very much. Plenty more business coming up throughout the day. We'll hear from Ntaling again tomorrow morning.
When it comes to world-class exhibitions and event solutions, one name leads the way. GL Events South Africa. From concept to completion, we transform ideas into exceptional experiences, delivering seamless events for conferences, exhibitions, business functions, and more. With global expertise and local insight, we provide innovative, sustainable, and turnkey event solutions you can trust. Partner with the industry leader. Partner with GL Events South Africa. Visit gl-events.co.za.
Bafana Bafana are preparing for the 2026 FIFA World Cup, which will be hosted by the United States of America, Canada, and Mexico from 11 June to 19 July 2026. Bafana Bafana will host 2 international friendlies against Panama on Friday, 27 March in Durban at the Moses Mabhida Stadium at 7 p.m. and Tuesday, 31 March in Cape Town at the DHL Stadium at 7:30 p.m. Tickets are available at Ticket Pro at 80 Rand for adults and 50 Rand for children under 12. For more details, visit safa.net and Bafana Bafana on X.
Catch the season premiere of Color Your Plate this Sunday evening at 7 as 4 hungry home cooks step into the kitchen to reimagine beloved family favorites in bold and unexpected ways. With the return of a Sterling from a previous season judging their every move, only one will earn the chance to progress and cook alongside them in the next round. Who will impress and take the first step forward? Find out on Color Your Plate, Sundays at 7 p.m, repeat Saturdays at 4:30 only on SABC2.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Like I said, we've got a bit of time this morning, which is great news, so we can take your calls on so many of the topics. 086 000 2032 is the phone number. Where do we start? We can talk about what is happening in the Middle East if you want. We spoke to Timothy Walker earlier on about what is happening with the maritime trade operations up in the East and the Middle East. There's the Public Service Association that are voicing support for a proposed insourcing bill. Seems like a good idea if we can save millions or trillions. Apparently 1 trillion rand is spent on outsourcing. Then there's the Defence Force being deployed to support the South African police services. They've been in Elders, and you heard from the El Dorado Park Ward 18 councillor about what is happening there, calling on the community to get involved in the situation as well. She used a bad word, so apologies for that bad word, but you heard her strong views there. There was Dr. Louise du Plessis, who was talking about the land reform, access to housing, how that remains a human rights issue on Human Rights Month, and then glaucoma. We spoke about it. You want to touch on that. And I think the big talking point at the moment is this: is the ambassador from the United States. The United States growing increasingly frustrated with South Africa for failing to respond to those 5 key demands. You heard a caller saying, let's hear from Durko. Let's hear what they are doing about those demands. If they have been officially received and if there's any movement on that. 086 000 2032. We're going to go through calls in a moment. Let's take voice notes first, 1 or 2.
The councillor is right, John. The councillor is right. We do not have SEPs. There's no SEPs. There's nothing. We don't have any policemen. And the Madlanga Commission and Ad hoc Commission continues to show us that we are on our own. And she has a good point again. They are just there to show their faces and then they will go. So it's not going to make any changes. It's not going to make any changes. I'm of the view that in order to have changes, it needs to start with our leadership. The government needs to start taking us serious. At the moment, they don't take us serious, and yet we continue to vote them into power. We see they don't take us serious, but we give them power, and we expect them to take us serious. But yeah, that's the situation.
Let's go to calls. Tando's in Bloemfontein. What do you want to talk about, Tando?
There's a war in Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
So, and also we have this council, either it's ICC, your United Nations. So the way they rule, it shows how like the world is like situated, because they are not ruling like fairly. Look, where USA did bomb too many countries, your Libya, your Syria, but there's no sanction. Either it's FIFA, ICC. So you also see like United States participating in this international countries. But look what is happening like to Russia, and also look, for example, in Africa, Zimbabwe has been banned to even participate for like World Cup for how many years now. So for me, it doesn't serve like any purpose. I was also shocked seeing like a message from like United Nations. What about like America? So that's my only concern.
So do we ban America, or do we unban all the nations?
We should also ban it. So when we rule, so this in international like organizations or council, they should be uniform when it comes to like ruling. Why don't we see sanctions or banning of Israel? You see, because it is not in a nutshell. Because it, like we also saw when South Africa took Israel to international court, and they also find it like Israel did invade Palestine. You see, so but we didn't see any sanctions on Israel. So these powerhouses, they have like veto or immunity for them to be sanctioned. So it's so very, very concerning.
All right.
According to me.
Yep, you're not the only person to say that, Tando. Many people saying the double speak is fascinating. Let's go to, is it Eunice in Johannesburg? What do you want to talk about, Eunice?
Yeah, hi, John. John, regarding this U.S. Ambassador Bozo, I mean, he cannot come into this country with preconceived ideas, conditions. These are the 5 conditions, and they must be met. You know, and I agree that, with the DIRCO having demarched him. Well, by the way, the EFF is saying they should have marched him out of the country. Yes. That's another story. But he himself has got a history, complete conservative right-wing history, going back to the 70s and 80s at Bozo. He opposed the anti-apartheid movement. He, in fact, when Oliver Tambo met the anti-apartheid movement, tried to push sanctions on South Africa, he opposed it then. He called Nelson Mandela and the ANC and liberation movement terrorists. And today he wants to come and tell us that Ayatollah Khamenei is the biggest terrorist in the world when it was an imposed war on Iran. Remember this, it's not just a war, it's an imposed war. He doesn't talk of the 165 schoolgirls that were massacred in one Tomahawk missile. By the way, Tomahawk is named after the Red Indians that were annihilated and obliterated in America.
Let's stick to one issue, Eunice. I just want to talk to. Do you think that it was right that Ibrahim Rasool was kicked out of the US?
Wrong.
I mean, so is it, on that same note, would it be wrong to kick out the US ambassador out of South Africa?
Well, obviously, we're looking definitely on that basis. Then he shouldn't be here also. In fact,
so because Rasool, the US expelled Rasool based on his views and his interviews, the same thing should apply to the US ambassador. But we disagreed with the fact that Rasool was kicked out of the USA. So surely then we should be the better person and say, well, we'll keep you as the ambassador. We're just going to demarche you and ask questions of you.
Yes, obviously, because the Americans have, they are a superpower there on that basis, and then with all the sanctions and whatever comes with. What is also interesting, John, is that a lot of people don't know, that. For example, they snatched the sitting president, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife out there.
Yeah, I think many
and the
people
fact
know
of the matter is, the Americans, I'm just diverting slightly, the Americans there have imposed this. Hello, are you there?
No, I'm listening.
Yeah, they have imposed something that all Venezuelan sales must be done in US dollars. The same thing, China has been buying 40% of Iranian oil in the yuan, Chinese currency. And the new order there is that any sales of Iranian oil must be done in US dollars. So this is what the whole issue is all about, is that the dollar must be the dominant currency in the world. And that is where this whole issue comes up. And really, I think by the way, this it's good, coming back to the thing, it's good that Dirko has put him in line, and he should be in line, that he is not here to dictate. He represents the country. He must respect our courts. He must respect our country and respect the laws of this country. And lastly, John, if you read the Daily Maverick article, there are thousands of, I might say, white South Africans who are coming back. In fact, I read
there's questions about if it's thousands or if it's just one family.
Well, whatever. But I read one article, one piece of one person who was living in the USA, and he said, I'd rather be in South Africa than being in that country where there's mass killings and uncertainty about safety there.
Okay, Ines in Johannesburg, thank you very much. Miles and Bond, we're going to come to you in a moment.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's been a dreadful morning just outside Durban in the Upper Highway area and surround. Some good news. The N3 going through to Cliffdale has been reopened. They finally managed to clear that overturned Hazchem truck that was there since about 2 a.m. this morning. There is a massive backlog still to clear from Marion Hill Plaza out through Shongweni and on the M13 approaching the N3 Key Ridge. It's just an enormous backlog that was stuck there and stacked there during the closure. So the road is open. It is starting to filter through, but it will just take a little while to normalise. A lot of pressure on the side roads, Cassia Road between the M13 and Old Main up through Hillcrest, Bottas Hill, and then again through Drummond and out through Cato Ridge. A lot of traffic pressure on that Old Main, the R103 if you like, due to the big volumes of traffic that diverted there this morning. Now going the other way, that's all going to Pietermaritzburg. Going the other way to Durban, the M13 remains closed, getting from Kloof onto Fields Hill, and that's due to an earlier truck crash and lost load there. So coming through from Gillett, from the Hillcrest side, big traffic on the M13, big backlogs on the alternative Wide Bank Road, and heavy congestion inside local routes in that Kloof area. So just a really, really bad morning, but at least some hope, particularly if you're Pietermaritzburg bound, that things should start to normalise. Crossing to Joburg, pretty heavy coming in from Ekurhuleni this morning. A crash on the R24, that's the airport highway, just after Edenvale. That's big traffic parking back to Barber Road. A truck crash around the Edenvale exit on the N12, also causing some delays. And the N3 into the roadworks at Van Buren Road, still causing backlogs as well. Cape Town, the main road, very heavy through Clovelly. If you're moving between Muizenberg and Fishhook, it really is bad both ways. And the R44 still queuing out of Somerset West to Stellenbosch. There's no lights for a second day at the Annandale Road junction, causing that backlog. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
You can become a victim of a legal problem: wrongful arrest, assault, uncontested divorce, rental disputes, maintenance matters, or labor problems. It can happen to you. Clientele Legal provides tough professional lawyers for an affordable monthly premium. Our legal team is standing by to assist you 24 hours a day. Join today. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
This February, fall in love with friendships that feel like family. Old bonds, new beginnings, and chapters that remind us why love, in all its forms, matters. The story comes full circle in The Best Man, the final chapters, where love, loyalty, and life collide one last time. Because some stories stay with you long after the final scene. The Best Man, the final chapters, weeknights 7 p.m. only on S3 of the Love.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Last 6 minutes of the show. Johnny for Tulas. Let's go to Bond in Gqeberha. What do you want to say, Bond?
Good morning, John and the listeners. Thank you very much for taking my call. The remarks by Ambassador Boswell, it talks to two of the purposes of the United Nations Charter, which is a threat amongst those states that are signatories. The first one is the purpose of the one of the purposes of the UN is to establish and promote diplomatic and friendly relations among states. That is why there are embassies in all those states, is to promote that principle, diplomatic relations. The second one is non-interference in the domestic affairs of another state, only except in 3 extreme situations where there are war crimes, genocide, and crimes against humanity, or when it is dictated by Chapter 7, subsection 41 or 42 of the UN Charter, which says, "We've exhausted all peaceful means. this country or state is a threat to international peace and security. Let's impose economic sanctions, diplomatic sanctions, etc.
Okay.
So if we are going to another state to establish as an ambassador, it's determined by the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, especially Article 4, that says the receiving state must be respected its sovereignty. The sending state must represent the interests of its own state, not infringing on the sovereignty of the whole state. So Boswell cannot dictate their agenda, what you must do. We're not a colony of any country. Resolution, the United
Isn't that
Nations.
his sole job? Is as the U.S.
No, it's
ambassador
not.
is to portray what the U.S. wants.
Yes, but you cannot dictate this is your grocery list that you must do. We're a sovereign state. Sovereignty is internal and external power to determine your own laws and to interact with whoever you have to do, not to tell them what to do, unless they think that
hold
we're a
on.
colony.
But I'm just trying to put this into words that I can understand myself. He's not necessarily dictating. It's like this is what the U.S. would like you to do. It's the same as Zimbabwean would say, this is what we would like you to do.
No.
Whoever, the U.K., this is what we would like you to do. It's not up. It's now up to us to decide whether we want to do that or not.
No, they can't do that. They must respect. That's why the principle also says states enjoy sovereign equality.
So
they
why
can't
are they
tell
here?
us what to do.
What is the point of them being here?
To represent the interests of USA, but without telling us what to do. We don't tell them what to do in America.
Why
I'll
not?
make it simplified.
Why don't we go to America and say, this is what we want you to do for us?
No, we can't. We'll be infringing. We'll be treating them as a colony. That will be neo-colonialism and terrorism. Let me simplify it this way, John. If a visitor comes to your house, that person must respect the rules and the authority. Say what you have to say
They're
and
demanding
leave.
brandy when you've only got whiskey, for example.
No, you can't. That's exactly the point. You must stop brandy and this and this. Don't drink liquor. You don't just drink Coca-Cola and Fanta Orange. That is out of order.
That's
to simplify it.
In the same breath, this is Trumpism at its finest, right?
It's what?
It's Trumpism at its finest. This is what Donald Trump does.
Yeah, but Donald Trump must be taught about the rules of engagement in international law. He's badly advised on those.
All right,
Thank you.
Bonding Klebecha. Let's go to Miles in El Dorado Park. Go ahead, Miles. You want to talk about the SANDF?
Listen here, John. Your producers censoring me. I'm not going to talk about the soldiers anymore. I just want to know, when will this censorship stop against Miles Boodoo at SAFM?
You're on the radio,
When will it
Miles.
stop?
Go ahead. Stop moaning and tell us what you want to say.
Look, I'm fed up. I've been holding on, and you guys used to call us back because we are impoverished. We are coming from a disadvantaged background, and you guys, you tell your producer there that I'll come for
Miles,
him.
you have an
I'll come
opportunity
for
to
him.
say your say. Say your say.
Listen here, the soldiers here are a scary tactic. They come here and they will be gone in next 2-3 months and so on, and the situation will be worse. You've got a community policing forum that was never funded to do what the Constitution says of the community policing forum. They come here, the politicians overwhelm the community policing forum with this panyaza political shenanigan. Now, my advice is let them train both community policing forum, this panyas, so that when the soldiers are gone and forgotten, then the real fight against crime, the combat against crime, preventing crime, and the causes of crime are dealt with here and all over the country.
That was part of the discussion we're going to put in when this was first mooted, that the police and CPF and other people must be trained correctly so that when the military move out, they can move in. Is that not happening?
That is what we told them right from the beginning.
Yes.
You see, these politicians who are incompetent, who are ignorant, they come here in Eldos, they go all over, took ideas from people and then make it their ideas. That is why it never worked. This thing of Panyaza and the community policing forum, that is what we told him when he came here, but he's no more coming here because we realized that what a thug he is, political thug, come and take ideas, make it theirs, and then from there live life as if nothing is happening. We are here in El Dorado Park. We live through a barrel of a gun. It is the belly of the beast, and it is only the strong that survives here. They come here and talk nonsense and go away because they think people will never challenge them. I'm not afraid of one of them because they are all useless, John.
All right, Miles, thank you very much. Miles Boodoo finishing it off there. Thank you very much for listening. Kathy's up next. We've got commissions and ad hoc commissions and all those things coming up live here on SAFM as well. Thanks very much to the team for putting the show together. I'm John Gericke. I'll see you tomorrow. It's 9 o'clock.
In our top stories, Mpumalanga police probe 2 murder cases and AfriForum slams report on South Africans returning home. Good morning. Mpumalanga police have opened 2 murder cases and an inquest docket after a man killed his wife, their 3-year-old son, and turned the gun on himself. He also allegedly shot and injured his sister-in-law and his wife's uncle. Provincial police spokesperson Jabu Ndubane says the suspect fled the scene with his 6-year-old daughter to his parents' home.
Police have proceeded to the suspect parents' house in search of him. Upon arrival, the officers found the suspect inside his vehicle with a gunshot wound and also showed no signs of life. It is further reported that the suspect shot his 6-year-old daughter, who managed to escape and seek assistance from her grandmother. She was transported to hospital in a stable condition for medical treatment. The suspect alleged used his personal firearm to commit this act. The firearm has been seized and booked as part of the ongoing investigation.
In Durban, 2 men have been killed during a shootout with police this morning at a petrol station near a popular shopping mall in Westville. It's reported that 3 suspected criminals were travelling in a vehicle when they were intercepted by police and a private security company. It's believed a shootout ensued between the suspects and law enforcement. 1 suspected criminal sustained fatal gunshot wounds. The 2nd suspect jumped over a nearby wall and fell to his death. The 3rd suspect has been arrested. Police have uncovered an illicit cigarette storage warehouse at Navana and Polokwane in Limpopo. Police have arrested the manager of the store. Thousands of boxes of illicit cigarettes were confiscated along with other products including energy drinks. The warehouse has since been placed under police guard. Limpopo Police Commissioner Timbi Hadebe says more arrests are expected.
Let me say the team of the specialized detectives, they're still working. This investigation that they are doing, it will tell us who do we arrest. At this particular stage, I will not mention anything.
Former National Director of Public Prosecutions Bulelani Ngcuka has told the TRC Cases Inquiry in Johannesburg that the then National Director of Public Prosecutions, Vusi Pikoli, should have simply been directed by the law on whether or not to prosecute TRC cases. He was asked to reflect on a secret memorandum from Pikoli to the then Justice Minister Bridget Mabandla, where the former complained of political interference by a forum of Directors General. The memorandum wanted him to wait for its recommendations before proceeding with prosecutions. Ngcuka says he's hesitant to judge those who succeeded him at the NPA.
You don't know the circumstances under which they were operating. One is not in possession of all the full facts. And I don't want to be seen to be critical of my successors. But let me say this. I cannot find any reason why the National Director can say he does not know what to do. The law is clear. You take the decision. You prosecute. You don't ask for the advice from other people. That would have been my view. So I don't know what caused my colleague to take that decision. But at the end of the day, he should have been the one to say no.
And finally, AfriForum has rubbished reports that a number of South Africans who arrived in the United States as refugees since May last year are reportedly heading back home. The group of refugees left the country citing government-backed racial discrimination and persecution targeting the Afrikaner community. US President Donald Trump granted them priority refugee status in February last year. AfriForum has dismissed reports of their return in droves as misinformation. Ernest van Zyl is head of public relations at AfriForum.
The article that the story is based on the testimony of one person who left in 2003, and then also a comment by the Minister of Home Affairs who said, I quote, 1,000 South African expats have indicated that they would like to return, which is completely, and that's worldwide and no race attached, so that's completely normal. Thousands of South Africans leave and come back every year in regards to immigration. So I think this is a textbook case of just disinformation. Anyone who's pushing the idea that these are white refugees returning in their thousands, there's absolutely no proof of that.
Recapping the top story, Mpumalanga police have opened 2 murder cases and an inquest docket after a man killed his wife, their 3-year-old son, and turned the gun on himself. For SAFM News, I am Ann Musa.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
This February, fall in love with food that tells a story. From bold new culinary stars to untamed destinations and unforgettable flavors. Gordon Ramsay brings passion, pressure, and purpose to your screen. Gordon Ramsay's feature food stars, Wednesdays 6 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
MEC for Finance in the Eastern Cape Province, Mlungisi Mvogo, will table the 2026 budget speech on 13 March 2026 at 10 a.m. at the Eastern Cape Provincial Legislature. This budget speech will outline how government will responsibly allocate resources to drive service delivery and support our provincial priorities. Be part of the conversation. Follow us on Facebook, Eastern Cape Provincial Treasury and MEC Mlungisi Mvogo, on X at EC Treasury, and on LinkedIn, Provincial Treasury, Eastern Cape.
This Human Rights Month, we commemorate a significant milestone, the Bill of Rights at 30, making human dignity real. For 3 decades, South Africa's constitution has been a beacon of equality, freedom and justice for all. Yet dignity is not just written in our constitution, it must be lived, protected and upheld every single day. Join SAFM as we unpack the issues that matter, elevate voices driving change, and reflect on the progress we've made while confronting the work that still lies ahead. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
You can become a victim of a legal problem: wrongful arrest, assault, uncontested divorce, rental disputes, maintenance matters, or labor problems. It can happen to you. Clientele Legal provides tough professional lawyers for an affordable monthly premium. Our legal team is standing by to assist you 24 hours a day. Join today. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
This February, fall in love with food that tells a story. From bold new culinary stars to untamed destinations and unforgettable flavors. Gordon Ramsay brings passion, pressure, and purpose to your screen. Gordon Ramsay Uncharted, Sundays 5 p.m. Only on S3. Open up. S3.
The Talking Point with Kathy Motlatlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Comments like, man up, real men don't cry, and my mother's personal favorite, get your priorities straight, only serve to drive home the point that when it comes to the male image, weakness is not welcome. And so it's because of this fear of being deemed weak that it can be difficult for us to take full advantage of a resource like therapy. It's because of this conditioning that it can become hard for us to grasp the tools needed to get us through life-altering events. It's because of this belief